A 26-year-old woman collided with the most dangerous man in New York inside an airport terminal and called him a heartless bastard to his face. 30 minutes later, she discovered he wasn't just wealthy. He was Damien DeLuca, the infamous Mafia boss who ruled Manhattan's underworld with brutal precision. And somehow, impossibly, he was also her new employer. One wrong move had just shattered her entire future before it even began. Will Selena survive working for the man she publicly humiliated? Or will this collision destroy everything she's ever worked for? Stay with me until the end of this story, and drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this wild ride travels across the world. The thunderstorm hit Los Angeles International Airport like divine punishment. Rain hammered the terminal windows in sheets while Selena Moretti sprinted through Terminal B clutching her carry-on bag against her chest. Her sneakers squeaked against polished floors. Overhead speakers announced boarding calls in mechanical voices that made her panic worse. Gate 47, Flight 847 to New York. Final boarding. She was going to miss it. 6 months of applications. 14 interviews. One miracle job offer from Blackthorn Holdings, some mysterious international corporation headquartered in Manhattan that paid more than she'd earned in 3 years combined. And she was about to lose everything because traffic on the 405 had turned into a parking lot during the worst storm California had seen in months. Selena rounded a corner near the security checkpoint, dodging a family with screaming children and a businessman shouting into his phone about quarterly reports. Her lungs burned. Sweat dampened her shirt beneath her jacket despite the airport's aggressive air conditioning. The departure board blinked overhead. Flight 847. Status, final call. Excuse me, sorry. Coming through. She didn't see him until impact. 1 second Selena was running. The next she slammed directly into something solid and immovable that smelled expensive. Leather, cedar, something darker she couldn't identify. Her bag flew from her hands. Notebooks exploded across the terminal floor. Pens scattered. A lipstick rolled beneath a polished black leather shoe. Selena hit the ground hard. Pain shot through her knee. Her palm stung against cold tile. For 3 seconds, she just knelt there, gasping while her brain tried processing what happened. Then a voice spoke above her. "You should watch where you're going." Cold, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't apologize for anything. Selena looked up. The man standing over her didn't belong in an airport terminal. He belonged on magazine covers or behind the tinted windows of cars that cost more than her entire college education. Tall. Maybe 6'2". Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones. The kind of symmetry that didn't happen naturally. He wore a charcoal suit tailored so precisely it looked like a second skin. Silver watch. Black leather shoes polished to a mirror shine. But his eyes. Emerald green. Completely unreadable. Looking at her the way scientists looked at specimens under glass. And the expression on his face suggested he found her lacking. Something hot and furious ignited in Selena's chest. "I should watch where I'm going?" She scrambled to her feet, ignoring the throbbing in her knee. "You were standing in the middle of the walkway like you owned the entire airport." One dark eyebrow lifted fractionally. "I wasn't running, because you probably have all the time in the world." Selena grabbed her bag, shoving notebooks inside with shaking hands. Her face burned. Around them, travelers slowed to watch the confrontation. "Let me guess. First-class ticket, private lounge access, never missed a flight in your privileged life." The stranger's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile, something colder. "And you're late for coach." The condescension in those 4 words made Selena want to throw her bag at his perfect face. "You know what?" She straightened, meeting those emerald eyes directly, even though looking at him made her chest feel strange. "People like you make me sick. Walking around in your expensive suits thinking the world exists to get out of your way. You don't know anything about real life. You've probably never struggled for anything. Never had to choose between groceries and rent. Never worked 3 jobs just to afford college. Are you finished?" His voice cut through her rant like a blade. Selena's hands clenched into fists. "No, I'm not finished. Because men like you need to hear this. You're not better than everyone else just because you have money. You're not more important. You're just spoiled and arrogant and emotionally dead inside. And you," the stranger interrupted softly, are about to miss your flight." He pointed past her shoulder. Selena spun around. Through the terminal windows, she could see the jetway pulling back from gate 47. The departure board updated. Flight 847. Status departed. The bottom dropped out of her stomach. No. No, 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 no. She whirled back toward the stranger, words already forming, but he was walking away. Just turning and walking away like she didn't exist. Like their entire confrontation meant nothing. Wait. Selena started after him, then stopped. What was she going to do? Demand he fix this? Demand he care that she'd just missed the most important flight of her life? Men like him didn't care about people like her. Around her, the terminal continued moving. Travelers rushed past. Announcements echoed overhead. The storm hammered against windows. And Selena stood there alone, surrounded by scattered notebooks and the ruins of everything she'd worked for. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out with numb fingers. Email notification from Blackthorn Holdings. Miss Moretti, your orientation is scheduled for tomorrow 9 a.m. Failure to attend will result in immediate termination of your employment offer. No exceptions. Selena read it 3 times. Then she walked to the customer service desk on legs that felt disconnected from her body. 2 hours later, she sat in a different terminal waiting for the next available flight to New York. The storm had grounded half the departures. She'd paid an extra $300. She didn't have to get a seat on the 9 p.m. red-eye. Her credit card was screaming. Her knees still throbbed, and she couldn't stop replaying the confrontation with the stranger. Emotionally dead inside. Had she really said that to a complete stranger's face? Yes. Yes, she had. Because everything about him had triggered something furious in her chest. The casual arrogance, the dismissive tone, the way he looked at her like she was an inconvenience he'd stepped in. Selena knew men like that, rich, powerful, completely disconnected from how the rest of the world actually lived. Her father had been like that before the divorce, before the scandal, before everything collapsed and her mother spent 5 years rebuilding their lives from nothing. Men like that destroyed things without even noticing. The boarding call finally came at 8:47 p.m. Selena joined the line of exhausted travelers shuffling toward the gate. Coach. Middle seat, next to the bathroom. She checked the seating chart. This was going to be 6 hours of hell, followed by whatever disaster waited in New York. But at least she'd make orientation. At least she still had the job. The flight attendant scanned her boarding pass, smiled professionally, then frowned at her screen. Ms. Moretti? Selena's stomach dropped. Is something wrong? No, actually, the attendant's smile brightened. There's been an upgrade. Follow me, please. An upgrade? Selena didn't move. I didn't request an upgrade. Complimentary from the airline for the inconvenience with your earlier flight. The attendant gestured toward the jetway. This way, please. We're about to close the doors. Selena followed her onto the plane in a daze. Through coach, past the curtain, into first class, where everything was leather seats and warm lighting and passengers sipping champagne like they were at a cocktail party instead of on an airplane. The attendant led her to seat 2A window, extra legroom, a amenity kit already waiting. Enjoy your flight, Miss Moretti. Selena sank into the seat. The leather felt like butter. Her brain couldn't process this. Airlines didn't just upgrade people for free. That wasn't how the world worked. But right now she was too exhausted to question good luck. She buckled her seatbelt, closed her eyes, tried to slow her racing heart. Then someone sat down beside her in seat 2B. Selena didn't open her eyes. Didn't want to make small talk with some businessman who'd expect her to be impressed by his stock portfolio. The flight attendant's voice came from nearby. Warm, slightly flirtatious. The usual, Mr. DeLuca? Whiskey. Neat. Selena's eyes snapped open. She turned her head and looked directly into the face of the man from the terminal. For exactly 3 seconds, neither of them moved. He sat there in the aisle seat looking at her with those unreadable emerald eyes while recognition flickered across his expression. He'd changed jackets. No tie now. First button of his shirt undone. But definitely the same man, the same impossibly handsome face, the same arrogant mouth. The same person she'd publicly called spoiled, privileged, and emotionally dead 90 minutes earlier. Selena's face went nuclear. You. she whispered. Me, he agreed. The flight attendant returned with his whiskey, set it down on his tray table with another smile that suggested she'd give him a lot more than alcohol if he asked, then disappeared toward the galley, leaving Selina trapped beside the stranger in a leather seat 30,000 feet from escape. Words died in her throat. I didn't know. I didn't realize that you were in first class? He picked up the whiskey glass, studied the amber liquid. Neither did I. I got upgraded. I've never... She was babbling. Stop babbling. Look, about what I said in the terminal. I was stressed and late, and I shouldn't have called me emotionally dead? Selina flinched. Yeah, that. He took a slow sip of whiskey, watching her over the rim of the glass with an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. You also called me spoiled, arrogant, privileged. I know. She wanted to melt into the leather seat and disappear. I'm sorry. I was completely out of line. Were you wrong? The question caught her off guard. What? About any of it. He set down the glass, turned slightly in his seat to face her directly. Was your assessment inaccurate? Selina stared at him. This felt like a trap, like a test she didn't understand. I don't know you, she said carefully, so I can't really judge him, but you did judge. Something almost like amusement flickered in those green eyes. Within 30 seconds of meeting me, based entirely on how I look. Heat flooded her face again. You're right, I made assumptions. I do that sometimes when I'm upset. It's not fair, and I'm working on it, and I really am sorry. Silence stretched between them. The plane's engines hummed. Around them, first-class passengers settled into their seats. The flight attendants began the safety demonstration. Selina focused on the seatback screen in front of her and prayed for the flight to end quickly. Then the stranger spoke again. Damien. She looked at him. What? My name. He extended his hand. Damien DeLuca. Selina took his hand automatically. His grip was warm, firm, the kind of handshake that suggested control without crushing. Selina Moretti. I know. Her stomach flipped. How do you... But Damien was already releasing her hand and turning back to his whiskey. Conversation apparently over. Selina sat there trying to understand what just happened. He knew her name, but how? They'd never met before the terminal collision. Unless... The upgrade. Complimentary from the airline. No. Airlines didn't track down passengers and upgrade them because some rich guy felt guilty about a confrontation. That was insane, wasn't it? The plane pushed back from the gate, taxied toward the runway. Selina gripped the armrests as they accelerated into takeoff. She'd never been comfortable with flying, hated the sensation of leaving the ground, hated trusting her life to physics and engineering. Beside her, Damien DeLuca looked completely relaxed. Of course he did. Men like him probably had private jets. The plane climbed through turbulence. Selina's knuckles went white on the armrests. She focused on breathing, counted backwards from 100, tried not to think about being trapped in a metal tube 6 miles above the earth. Something touched her hand. She glanced down. Damien had placed his hand over hers on the armrest. Not holding, just resting there. Warm and steady, and surprisingly gentle for someone who looked carved from stone. Selina's breath caught. She looked at him. He was staring straight ahead, jaw tight, not acknowledging what he'd just done. But his hand stayed on hers until they reached cruising altitude and the seatbelt sign dinged off. Then he withdrew, picked up his whiskey, took another sip like nothing had happened. Thank you, Selina whispered. Damien didn't respond. The flight settled into the quiet hum of pressurized air and distant engine noise. Around them, passengers pulled out laptops and tablets. The flight attendants began drink service. Selina should probably sleep. She had maybe 4 hours before landing, before orientation, before starting a job she still didn't fully understand. Instead, she found herself studying the man beside her, Damien DeLuca. The name felt familiar somehow, like something she should recognize but couldn't quite place. Can I ask you something? The words left her mouth before she could stop them. He glanced at her. You're going to anyway. Why did you upgrade my ticket? I didn't. Right, the airline just randomly decided to be generous. His mouth curved slightly, still not quite a smile. Does it matter? Yes. Selena shifted in her seat to face him more directly. Because if you did it out of guilt or pity, then I don't want it. I can pay for my own. You don't have $300. Damien's voice stayed completely neutral. You charge the red-eye ticket on a credit card that's already maxed out. You're wearing shoes with holes in the soles. Your bag is held together with duct tape. And you flinched when the flight attendant offered you champagne because you thought you'd have to pay for it. Selena's face went hot and cold simultaneously. He'd noticed all of that, cataloged it, analyzed her financial situation in the time it took to board a plane. So what? She lifted her chin. Being poor doesn't make me pathetic. No. Damien's eyes met hers. It makes you desperate enough to work for people you know nothing about. The bottom dropped out of her stomach. What are you talking about? Blackthorn Holdings. He turned fully toward her now, expression still unreadable. That's where you're going. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. orientation. How did he... Are you following me? Selena's voice came out harder than intended. Because if this is some kind of stalker situation, I'm your employer. 4 words. 4 words that detonated like a bomb in her chest. Selena stopped breathing. What? Blackthorn Holdings. Damien spoke like he was discussing the weather. I own it, along with 47 other companies across 6 industries. You were hired as a design consultant for the technology division. Your portfolio showed promise. The references were adequate. HR thought you'd be useful. No. No. This wasn't happening. Selena's voice cracked. You're the CEO of Blackthorn? Among other things. She was going to be sick, right here in first class, all over the leather seats and the complimentary champagne. I didn't know. The words tumbled out desperately. In the terminal, I had no idea who you were. I would never have said those things if I'd known. Why not? The question stopped her cold. Because you could destroy my entire life with a phone call. Because I need this job more than I need oxygen. Because everything I said was true, but saying it to your face was career suicide. Because it was unprofessional. But accurate. Damien picked up his whiskey again, swirled the liquid slowly. The cabin lights caught the silver of his watch, the sharp planes of his face, the complete lack of emotion in his expression. You called me spoiled, arrogant, privileged, emotionally dead. His voice stayed soft, controlled, more dangerous than shouting. You accused me of never struggling, never choosing between necessities, never working for anything. Selena felt tears burning behind her eyes, fought them back. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of him. And the moment you discovered I control your employment, Damien continued, you immediately started apologizing, explaining, trying to manage the damage. Of course I did. Her hands clenched in her lap. You can fire me. You can make sure I never work in this industry again. You have all the power here. Do I? It wasn't a question. Damien set down his glass, leaned back in his seat. Those emerald eyes studied her with the intensity of a predator deciding whether prey was worth the chase. Tell me something, Selena Moretti. Her name and his voice sent shivers down her spine. If I wasn't your employer, if we'd met under different circumstances, would you take back anything you said? The honest answer sat in her throat. She looked at him. Really looked at him, past the expensive suit and the perfect face and the obvious wealth. Searched for something human in those cold green eyes, and found nothing but walls. No, Selena said quietly. I wouldn't take it back. For exactly 3 heartbeats, Damien didn't move. Then slowly, so slowly she almost missed it, his mouth curved into something that might actually be a real smile. Good. He picked up his whiskey, finished it, set the empty glass on the tray table. Because people who lie to my face don't last long in my world. Then he reclined his seat, closed his eyes, and apparently decided the conversation was over, leaving Selena sitting there with her heart hammering and her mind racing and absolutely no idea what had just happened. She didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. Spent 6 hours trapped beside Damien DeLuca while her brain spiraled through every possible scenario. He was going to fire her the moment they landed, or worse, keep her employed just long enough to humiliate her publicly, make an example out of the girl who'd called him heartless, But he'd smiled. That terrible almost smile that looked like it hurt him. And he'd touched her hand during takeoff. None of it made sense. The plane descended through clouds over New York just as dawn painted the horizon orange and gold. Selena pressed her face to the window and watched Manhattan rise from the darkness like something out of a dream. Skyscrapers catching early light, rivers reflecting pink and purple, the city stretching endlessly in every direction. Somewhere down there was her new life, if she still had a job. The landing was smooth. Passengers began gathering bags and coats. Selena stayed in her seat, unsure of protocol. Did she wait for Damien to leave first? Follow him? Pretend they'd never met? He solved the problem by standing and pulling a sleek black bag from the overhead compartment. Then he looked down at her. Orientation is at 9 a.m., Blackthorn Tower, 43rd floor. His voice was back to being completely neutral. Don't be late. I won't. But Damien was already walking away, moving through first class with the confident stride of someone who'd never waited for anything in his life. Selena grabbed her duct-taped bag and followed at a distance. Through the jetway, into JFK's chaotic arrivals terminal. Damien moved like he had an invisible bubble around him, crowds parting automatically, people unconsciously stepping aside. She watched him walk toward ground transportation, where a man in a black suit was already waiting. Driver. Obviously. Probably one of several. The man opened the rear door of a black SUV with tinted windows. Damien paused before getting in. Turned. Looked directly at Selena across 50 feet of terminal floor. Their eyes met. Then he was gone. Door closing. SUV pulling away into New York traffic. And Selena stood there alone in the arrivals terminal at 6:47 a.m. with 2 hours to find her apartment, shower, change, and somehow make it to Blackthorn Tower without having a complete nervous breakdown. The apartment Blackthorn Holdings had arranged was a 6th-floor walk-up in a building that should have been condemned. Selena climbed the stairs with her bag banging against her thigh, breathing in the smell of old cooking and mysterious dampness. Her unit was number 6C, the key stuck in the lock. Inside was barely better than outside. Studio. Maybe 300 square feet. Stained carpet. Window overlooking a brick wall. Radiator that clanked ominously. Bathroom the size of a closet with tile that might have been white sometime in the previous century. But it was hers. For 6 months anyway. That's what the contract said. 6-month trial period. If she performed well, they'd discuss permanent placement. Selena dropped her bag on the floor, stood in the center of the empty apartment, and finally let herself feel the weight of everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. She'd left California, left her mother, left everything familiar, gambled her entire future on a job she didn't understand, working for a company owned by the most dangerous-looking man she'd ever met, a man she'd called emotionally dead to his face, a man who'd upgraded her ticket and touched her hand during takeoff and smiled like it caused him physical pain. Damien DeLuca. Selena pulled out her phone, typed his name into the search bar. The results loaded, and her blood went cold. Because Damien DeLuca wasn't just a CEO. He was infamous. Article after article, photos at charity galas and political events, connections to everyone who mattered in New York. But underneath the legitimate business coverage, there were other stories. Carefully worded, never quite saying what they meant. DeLuca Syndicate under federal investigation. Rival organization leader found dead after dispute with. Questions remain about DeLuca's ties to. Selena's hands started shaking. The Mafia. Damien DeLuca was a goddamn Mafia boss, and she'd just agreed to work for him. Blackthorn Tower dominated the Midtown skyline like a blade of black glass. Selena stood on the sidewalk at 8:53 a.m., staring up at the building while taxis screamed past and pedestrians flowed around her like water around a stone. 70 stories. Maybe more. The kind of building that existed to remind people how small they were. Black SUVs lined the street outside. Men in dark suits stood near the entrance, earpieces visible, scanning faces. Security, obviously. But the kind of security that suggested they weren't just checking IDs. Selena's stomach churned. She could still leave, get back on a plane, return to California, apologize to her mother. Find some other job that didn't involve organized crime and men with emerald eyes that saw straight through her. But the credit card was maxed. The apartment in LA was gone, and she'd spent 6 months fighting for this position. Selena squared her shoulders, walked toward the entrance. The security guard checked her ID against a tablet, nodded, directed her to the elevators. She stepped into a car made entirely of mirrors and brushed steel, pressed the button for the 43rd floor. The elevator shot upward so fast her stomach dropped. When the doors opened, Selena stepped into a reception area that looked like something from a design magazine. Glass walls, modern furniture, art that probably cost more than her college tuition. A woman behind the desk, beautiful, flawlessly dressed, looked up with a professional smile. Selena Moretti? Yes. Orientation is in conference room A, down the hall, third door on your left. You're the last to arrive. Of course she was. Selena found the conference room, stepped inside. 8 other people sat around a long table, all roughly her age, all looking nervous and excited and ready to prove themselves. At the head of the table stood a man in his 50s, gray hair, expensive suit, clipboard in hand. Miss Moretti? He checked his watch. Cutting it close. Sorry, Sit down. We're starting. Selena took the only empty chair. The man, he introduced himself as Richard Crane, head of HR, launched into a presentation about Blackthorn Holdings, the company history, the corporate structure, the expectations for new hires. Selena tried to focus, but all she could think about was Damien DeLuca somewhere in this building, above them probably, in some penthouse office making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Was he thinking about her, or had she already been forgotten? The orientation dragged on for 3 hours. Finally, Richard Crane dismissed them for lunch, told them to report to their assigned departments at 1 p.m., handed out security badges and employee handbooks. Selena accepted hers on autopilot. Then Richard called her name again. Miss Moretti, stay behind, please. Her stomach dropped. The other new hires filed out. The door closed. Richard looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. Mr. DeLuca wants to see you. What? Her voice came out too high. Why? I don't question Mr. DeLuca's requests. Richard handed her a key card. 72nd floor, private elevator. Security will direct you. Then he left her alone in the conference room with a key card burning in her hand and her heart trying to break through her ribs. Shots. The private elevator required the key card and a fingerprint scan. Selena placed her thumb on the reader with shaking hands. The doors slid open. She stepped inside. There was only one button. Up. The elevator rose smoothly, silently. Nothing like the public cars. This was designed for privacy, for people who didn't ride with the masses. When the doors opened, Selena stepped into a hallway that belonged in a 5-star hotel. Dark wood, soft lighting, artwork on the walls that she recognized from textbooks. At the end of the hall was a single door. She walked toward it on legs that felt disconnected from her body. Raised her hand to knock. The door opened before she could touch it, and Damien DeLuca stood there looking at her with those impossible green eyes. He'd changed clothes since the airport. Different suit, dark navy, perfectly tailored. His hair was slightly damp like he'd recently showered. He looked more rested than any human had a right to look after a red-eye flight. Come in. Not a request. Selena stepped past him into an office that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Minimalist furniture. A desk that looked hand-carved from a single piece of wood. Bookshelves lined with what appeared to be first editions. And in the corner, a bar cart with crystal decanters catching the afternoon light. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. Damien walked past her to the windows, stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the city spread beneath them. Do you know why you're here, Selena? Her name and his voice still did things to her pulse she didn't want to examine. No. Then let me clarify. He turned to face her. I don't make mistakes. When I hire someone, it's because they possess skills I need. When I fire someone, it's because they've proven themselves useless. You're neither mistake nor useless. Selena didn't know what to say to that. Your portfolio impressed my technology division. Damien's voice stayed neutral, clinical. Your redesign work on the Morrison project showed creativity under pressure. Your references suggested you're reliable, dedicated, willing to work harder than necessary. Okay, she swallowed. Is there a but coming? His mouth curved slightly. There's always a but. Silence stretched between them. Then Damien walked to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a folder and set it on the polished wood surface. In the terminal, he said quietly, you made several accusations. You called me privileged. Said I'd never struggled for anything, never had to make difficult choices. Selena's face burned. I apologized. You apologized for being unprofessional. His eyes met hers. Not for being wrong. Because I don't know if I was wrong. The words came out before she could stop them. You're right. I judged you based on appearance, but everything about you screams wealth and power and control. So yeah, I assumed you've never had to choose between paying rent or eating. I assumed doors open for you because of your last name. I assumed that I was born into this. Damien opened the folder, pulled out a photograph, slid it across the desk toward her. Selena looked down. The photo showed a teenage boy, maybe 16, standing in front of a run-down Brooklyn apartment building. Thin, bruised, wearing clothes that didn't fit, eyes hard in a way that suggested he'd already seen too much. But the eyes were unmistakable. Emerald green. Selena looked up at Damien. He stood perfectly still by the window, expression unreadable. But something in his posture had changed, like he was bracing for impact. My father died when I was 8, he said quietly. Stabbed outside a bar over a $20 gambling debt. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us in that apartment. I dropped out of school at 14 to help support us. By 16, I was running protection rackets for a local gang. By 18, I'd killed my first man. The air left Selena's lungs. I built the DeLuca syndicate from blood and strategy and pure necessity, Damien continued. Everything I have I took from people who tried to bury me. Every empire I control exists because I refuse to stay invisible. And yes, now I wear expensive suits and own this tower and make decisions that affect thousands of lives. He turned to face her fully. But underneath this suit are scars from knife fights and bullet wounds and burns from cigarettes pressed into my skin when I couldn't pay debts fast enough. So when you tell me I don't understand struggle, something dark flickered in his eyes. You're talking to a ghost, because the boy in that photograph died a long time ago. Selena couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only stand there staring at the man across from her while her entire worldview cracked apart. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because you work for me now. Damien's voice went hard. And everyone who works for me needs to understand something. I don't tolerate disloyalty. I don't accept failure. And I don't forgive betrayal. If you can't handle that, if you think you can judge me or question me or try to reform me, then leave now, before you waste both our time. Selena looked at the photograph on the desk, at the boy with bruises and hard eyes who'd become the most dangerous man in New York. She should be terrified. She should run. Instead, she heard herself say, I don't want to leave. Damien's expression didn't change. Why not? Because, how did she explain this? Because I called you emotionally dead, and I was wrong. You're not dead, you're just protected, walled off. And I think, her voice dropped. I think that photograph shows me why. For exactly 5 seconds, Damien didn't move. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the faint scar on his jaw, could smell cedar and something darker that made her head spin. You have no idea what you're getting into, he said softly. Working here, working for me, the things you'll see, the choices you'll have to make. Then tell me. Selena lifted her chin, met his eyes. Tell me what I'm getting into. Damien's hand came up. For one breathless second, she thought he was going to touch her face. Instead, he pressed a button on the phone clipped to his belt. Security, bring the car around. Then he stepped back, creating distance, rebuilding walls. Come with me, he said. I'll show you exactly what Blackthorn Holdings really is. And before Selena could process what was happening, Damien was walking toward the door, leaving her standing alone in his office with a photograph of a dead boy and the growing certainty that she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. But she followed him anyway. The black SUV cut through Manhattan traffic like a knife through water. Selena sat in the back seat beside Damien while the driver navigated streets she didn't recognize. Through tinted windows, she watched the city transform, the polished midtown towers giving way to grittier neighborhoods, warehouses, industrial complexes, areas where tourists didn't venture and locals kept their heads down. Damien hadn't spoken since they left Blackthorn Tower. He sat perfectly still, one hand resting on his knee, eyes fixed on something outside that she couldn't see. His jaw was tight, the scar near his mouth more visible in the harsh afternoon light filtering through the windows. Selena's heart hammered against her ribs. She should ask where they were going, should demand answers, should probably jump out at the next red light and run back to whatever normal life she'd left behind in California. Instead, she sat there breathing in the scent of leather and expensive cologne and tried not to think about the photograph of the bruised teenage boy who'd killed his first man at 18. The SUV turned down a narrow street lined with loading docks and chain-link fences, pulled up to a building that looked abandoned. Broken windows. Graffiti covering brick walls, the kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. The driver parked, got out, opened Damien's door. "Wait here," Damien told the driver. Then he looked at Selena. "Come with me. Don't speak unless I tell you to. Don't touch anything. And if someone asks who you are," his green eyes bore into hers. "You're mine." Heat flooded her face. "What does that mean?" "It means you belong to me, my employee, my responsibility, under my protection." He stepped out of the SUV. "It's the only thing that will keep you safe in there." Selena followed him on shaking legs. The building's entrance was a rusted metal door guarded by two men who looked like they bench-pressed cars for fun. Both wore dark jackets. Both had visible weapons holstered at their sides. They straightened when they saw Damien. "Boss?" The taller one nodded. "Marcus is waiting inside." Damien didn't acknowledge the greeting, just walked past them like they were furniture. Selena hurried after him. Inside the building was worse than outside. Concrete floors stained with substances she didn't want to identify. Exposed pipes dripping water. The smell of oil and rust and something metallic that made her stomach turn. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, half of them dead or flickering. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. Damien led her down a hallway, through a doorway, into a massive open space that had probably been a factory floor decades ago. Now it was something else entirely. Men stood in clusters throughout the room. 30, maybe 40, all armed, all watching Damien with expressions ranging from respect to fear to barely concealed hatred. Tables were scattered around the space covered with laptops, phones, stacks of cash rubber-banded into thick bundles. This wasn't a legitimate business operation. This was the syndicate. Selena's breath caught in her throat. A man approached from the back of the room, late 40s, scarred face, moving with the controlled violence of someone who'd spent his life hurting people. He stopped in front of Damien and crossed his arms. "You're late." "I'm here." Damien's voice stayed flat. "Where's the shipment?" "Delayed. Feds are watching the ports. We had to reroute through Jersey." The man's eyes slid to Selena, lingered. "Who's the girl?" "None of your concern, Marcus." "Everything in this room is my concern." Marcus stepped closer to Selena, studying her like livestock. "She looks lost. Looks like she doesn't belong here." Selena's hands clenched into fists. Damien moved between them so fast she barely saw it. 1 second, Marcus was standing there. The next, Damien had him by the throat, slamming him backwards into a support beam with a sound that made everyone in the room go silent. "Touch her," Damien said quietly, "and I'll kill you with my bare hands." Marcus's face went red. He clawed at Damien's grip, made choking sounds. Nobody moved to help him. Damien held him there for exactly 5 seconds, then released him. Marcus dropped to his knees, gasping. "The shipment," Damien repeated. "When does it arrive?" "Tomorrow night." Marcus coughed, spat blood. "Jersey docks, 11 p.m. "Good." Damien turned away like the violence hadn't happened. "I want triple security. If the feds are watching, they're looking for an excuse. Don't give them one." He walked back toward Selena, touched her elbow gently, guided her toward the exit. Behind them, Marcus climbed to his feet. His voice carried across the warehouse. "She's going to get you killed, Damien." Damien didn't stop walking, didn't acknowledge the words, but Selena felt his hand tighten fractionally on her arm. They didn't speak during the ride back to Blackthorn Tower. Selena stared out the window while her mind tried processing what she'd just witnessed. The warehouse, the armed men, the casual violence, Damien's hand around Marcus's throat, the way everyone had watched without intervening. Because Damien DeLuca was the kind of man who could choke someone unconscious in a room full of criminals and nobody would dare stop him. The SUV pulled up to the tower's underground parking garage. The driver opened Selena's door. She stepped out on legs that felt like water. Damien waited by the private elevator, swiped his keycard. The doors opened. They rode up in silence. When the elevator reached the 72nd floor, Damien stepped out, walked to his office, held the door open. "We need to talk." Selena followed him inside. The city spread beneath the windows in a carpet of glass and steel and afternoon shadows. Damien walked to the bar cart, poured whiskey into 2 glasses, held one out to her. "I don't drink during work hours," Selena said. "You do now." She took the glass. Her hands were shaking. The whiskey burned going down but settled the worst of the trembling. Damien leaned against his desk, watched her with those unreadable green eyes. "That was a mistake," he said finally. "I shouldn't have taken you there." "Why did you?" "Because you asked to see what Blackthorn Holdings really is." He swirled his whiskey. "That warehouse, those men, that's the foundation everything else is built on. The towers, the legitimate businesses, the political influence, all of it exists because of what happens in places like that." Selena set down her glass. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "You're a criminal." "Yes, you hurt people. When necessary. That man, Marcus, you could have killed him." "I've killed better men for less." Damien's expression didn't change. "Does that frighten you?" "It should. It absolutely should." Instead, Selena heard herself say, "What frightens me is how much control you have. How everyone in that room was terrified of you. How you didn't even blink before putting your hands on him. Control is survival in my world." Damien finished his whiskey, set the empty glass on his desk. "The moment people stop fearing you is the moment they start planning your death. I learned that at 14 when I watched my mother's landlord beat her unconscious over $300 in back rent. I couldn't stop him. I was too small, too weak, too powerless." His voice went cold. I swore that day I would never be powerless again. And I'm not. Because I built something that makes people afraid to even think about hurting me. That warehouse, those men, they're insurance. They're the reminder that crossing me has permanent consequences. Selena's chest felt tight. "But you didn't have to show me. You could have kept it hidden. Let me believe Blackthorn was just a normal corporation. And then what?" Damien pushed away from the desk, crossed to the windows. "You would have found out eventually. Someone would have told you, or you would have seen something you weren't supposed to see, and you would have run, or worse, you would have stayed and convinced yourself you could change me." He turned to face her. "I don't want people who lie to themselves working for me, Selena. I want people who understand exactly who I am and what I'm capable of. People who can look at the monster and decide whether they can live with it." The word hung between them. Monster. Selena walked to where he stood, stopped close enough to see the tension in his jaw. The way his hands stayed carefully at his sides, like he was forcing himself not to reach for her. "You're not a monster," she said quietly. Damien's laugh was harsh. "You saw what I did to Marcus. I saw you protect me." The words came out before she could stop them. "He was threatening me, looking at me like I was something he could take. And you stopped him, violently, brutally, but you stopped him." "That doesn't make me good. I never said you were good." Selena held his gaze. "But monsters don't show people photographs of their dead childhood. Monsters don't explain themselves. Monsters don't give employees a choice about whether to stay or run." Damien stared at her, something shifting behind those emerald eyes, something that looked almost like pain. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, read the screen. His expression went flat and dangerous. "I need to handle something. Security will take you back to your apartment." "Damien, this conversation is over." He was already walking toward the door. "Report to the technology division tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Don't be late." Then he was gone. leaving Selena alone in his office with an empty whiskey glass and the growing certainty that she'd just glimpsed something Damien DeLuca never let anyone see. The human being underneath the armor. The technology division occupied the entire 43rd floor of Blackthorn Tower. Selena arrived at 7:53 a.m. wearing the only professional outfit she owned that didn't look completely cheap. Black pants, white blouse, shoes she'd polished until they almost didn't look damaged. A woman met her at the elevators, early 30s, sharp eyes, tailored suit. "Selena Moretti, I'm Victoria Chen, head of design operations. You'll be working under me." She didn't offer a handshake, just turned and started walking. "Keep up. I don't repeat myself." Selena hurried after her. Victoria moved through the office like a force of nature. Employees scrambled out of her path. She led Selena past cubicles and conference rooms to a corner workspace with 2 monitors, an ergonomic chair, and a view of the building across the street. "Your station. Computer login credentials are in the envelope. Projects are assigned through the internal system. Deadlines are non-negotiable. Questions?" "What kind of projects?" "Whatever I assign you." Victoria's voice could have cut glass. "Right now, that's redesigning the user interface for a client portal. Due Friday, 4 days. The last designer spent 3 weeks on it and produced garbage. Don't waste my time the way he did." She dropped a thick folder on the desk, then walked away without another word. Selena stood there processing. 4 days. The folder felt like it weighed 10 pounds. She opened it. Inside were wireframes, user flow diagrams, technical specifications, and about 200 pages of documentation. The previous designer's work was highlighted in red throughout. Notes in the margins. Harsh. Critical. Pointing out every flaw. This wasn't a normal assignment. This was a test. Selena sat down, opened the computer, started reading. "But, months." 3 days later, she'd slept maybe 12 hours total. The project consumed everything. She worked through lunch, stayed late into the night while the office emptied around her, brought protein bars from a bodega near her apartment because she couldn't spare time for real meals. The previous designer's work wasn't just flawed, it was fundamentally broken. The navigation made no sense. The visual hierarchy was backwards. The whole thing looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never actually used software before. Selena tore it apart, rebuilt it from scratch. By Wednesday night, she had something that actually functioned. Clean, intuitive. Professional enough that clients wouldn't immediately demand a refund. But it wasn't extraordinary. And Damien DeLuca didn't accept ordinary. She'd seen him exactly twice since the warehouse visit. Once in the elevator Thursday morning. He'd nodded, said nothing. The second time through the glass walls of a conference room where he sat surrounded by men in expensive suits discussing something that made their expressions tight. He hadn't looked at her. Hadn't acknowledged her existence, like the conversation in his office had never happened. Selena told herself she didn't care, told herself she wasn't disappointed, focused on the project instead. Thursday night, she was still at her desk when Victoria appeared. It was nearly midnight. The floor was empty except for Selena and the security guard making rounds. "You're still here." Victoria's voice held something that might have been approval. "Show me what you have." Selena pulled up the redesigned interface. Victoria studied it in silence. Her expression gave away nothing. She clicked through screens, tested navigation, examined every detail. Finally, she straightened. "It's adequate." The word landed like a stone. "Mr. DeLuca requires excellence, not adequacy." Victoria crossed her arms. "You have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. to make this extraordinary. Otherwise, don't bother submitting it." She walked away, leaving Selena staring at the screen while exhaustion threatened to pull her under. Adequate. After 3 days of 16-hour shifts and skipped meals and work that should have been impressive, adequate. Selena's hands clenched into fists. Then she opened a new file and started over. At 3:47 a.m., she finally understood what was missing. The design was functional, clean, professional, everything a normal corporate portal should be. But Damien DeLuca wasn't building a normal corporation. He was building an empire that existed in 2 worlds simultaneously, legal and criminal, legitimate and dangerous. Everything about Blackthorn Holdings walked that razor edge between acceptable and forbidden. The portal should reflect that. Selena's fingers flew across the keyboard. She stripped away the safe corporate aesthetic, replaced it with something darker, elegant but threatening, like walking into an expensive restaurant and realizing the beautiful people at the next table were discussing a murder. Black backgrounds, minimal color, sharp angles that suggested precision and danger. Navigation that felt intuitive but subtly reminded users they were entering controlled territory. The kind of design that made people pay attention. The kind of design that said, "I'm in control and you're not." By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, Selena had created something extraordinary. She submitted it at 4:53 p.m., exactly 7 minutes before deadline. Then she went home and collapsed on her apartment floor, fully clothed, and slept for 14 hours straight. Back. Victoria called her into the conference room Monday morning. Selena walked in expecting criticism, expecting to be told the redesign was too aggressive, too dark, too far from what normal corporations did. Instead, she found Damien sitting at the head of the table. He looked up when she entered, those green eyes unreadable as always. "Sit down." Selena sat. Victoria stood beside Damien's chair. Her expression was carefully neutral. On the screen behind them was Selena's redesigned portal interface. "You took a risk," Damien said. "You ignored conventional design principles, created something that makes users uncomfortable." Selena's stomach dropped. "I can revise." "Don't." His voice cut through her explanation. "It's perfect." The room went silent. Damien stood, walked to the screen, gestured at the dark interface. "This understands what Blackthorn Holdings actually is. Not some sanitized corporate fantasy. The real thing. Powerful. Controlled. Dangerous if you cross it." He turned to face her. "How did you know?" "Because I met you." The words came out before Selena could think. "The warehouse, the way you move, how people react when you walk into a room. You don't build safe things. You build things that demand respect. The design should match that." Something flickered in Damien's expression. Then it was gone. "Victoria, give Ms. Moretti the Morrison project." Victoria's professional mask cracked slightly. "Sir, that's our largest client. If she—" "Give her the project." Damien's voice left no room for argument. "She has 4 weeks, full resources, whatever she needs." He walked toward the door, stopped beside Selena's chair. "Don't make me regret this." Then he left. Victoria stared at the closed door, then at Selena. "The Morrison project is worth $18 million, she said flatly. "It's a complete redesign of their global technology infrastructure. If you fail, Blackthorn loses the contract and Damien loses face with one of his most important allies." She dropped a folder on the table. Thicker than the last one. Heavier. "Don't fail." The Morrison project devoured Selena's life. She worked 18-hour days, learned systems she'd never touched before, coordinated with teams across 3 time zones. The pressure was constant, suffocating. Every decision felt like stepping onto ice that might crack. But she didn't break. Couldn't afford to break. Because somewhere in the back of her mind lived the memory of Damien's voice saying, "Don't make me regret this." 2 weeks in, she hit a problem she couldn't solve alone. The Morrison infrastructure used legacy code that nobody understood anymore. The original developers were long gone. The documentation was incomplete, and the whole system was held together with digital duct tape and prayers. Selena spent 3 days trying to reverse engineer it. Failed. She needed help from someone who understood criminal enterprises. Someone who'd built systems designed to hide information while keeping it accessible to the right people. She needed Damien. But Damien hadn't spoken to her since assigning the project. She'd seen him around the building, always surrounded by people, always moving with that controlled precision that made her chest feel strange, never looking at her, never acknowledging she existed. Selena told herself it didn't matter, told herself she didn't care whether the most dangerous man in New York noticed her, focused on the work instead. But Friday night at 11 p.m., alone in the empty office, staring at code that refused to make sense, she finally admitted defeat. She needed help. Selena pulled out her phone, stared at it. She didn't have Damien's number, had no way to contact him directly. Then she remembered the key card, the one Richard Crane had given her for the private elevator. She'd kept it in her wallet like a talisman, never used it again after that first day. Selena stood, grabbed her laptop, walked to the elevator bank, swiped the card. The doors opened. She stepped inside before she could change her mind. Hit the button for 72. The elevator rose smoothly, her heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. It was nearly midnight. Damien was probably long gone. Probably at home in whatever penthouse he owned. Probably. The doors opened. The hallway was dark except for a single light at the far end, coming from under Damien's office door. Selena walked toward it on legs that felt disconnected from her body, reached the door, raised her hand to knock, then stopped. Because voices were coming from inside, low, tense. Don't care what Marcus thinks. Damien's voice, hard. The shipment moves tomorrow night as planned. He's been talking to the other families. A second voice, older, gravelly. Saying you're distracted. Saying the girl is making you weak. Silence. Then Damien spoke again. Quiet. Dangerous. Marcus talks too much. He's not wrong, though, is he? The other man's voice turned sharp. You gave her the Morrison project. 18 million on the line, and you handed it to some nobody from California who's been here 3 weeks. That's not you, Damien. That's someone making emotional decisions. My decisions are none of your concern, Vincent. They are when they affect the syndicate, when they put all of us at risk because you can't keep your focus where it belongs. Selena should walk away, should turn around and leave before they discovered her eavesdropping. Instead, she stood frozen outside the door while her world cracked apart. I know what I'm doing, Damien said. Do you? Vincent's laugh was harsh. Because from where I'm standing, you're making the same mistake your father made, getting attached to someone who doesn't belong in this world. And we both know how that ended. The sound of glass shattering. Selena jumped, then Damien's voice, low, lethal. Get out, now, before I forget we're family. Footsteps approached the door. Selena turned and ran, made it to the elevator, jabbed the button. The doors opened just as Damien's office door swung wide. She caught a glimpse of an older man. Gray hair, expensive suit, cold eyes that swept the hallway and locked onto her for exactly 1 second. Then the elevator doors closed. Selena pressed herself against the wall, breathing hard, heart trying to break through her ribs. The girl is making you weak, getting attached to someone who doesn't belong in this world. She closed her eyes. This was a mistake. All of it. Taking this job, coming to New York, thinking she could work for someone like Damien DeLuca without consequences. The elevator descended, stopped at 43. The doors opened. Damien stood in the hallway waiting. His tie was gone, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, hair slightly disheveled like he'd run his hands through it, and his eyes, those green eyes looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered and the biggest mistake he'd ever made simultaneously. How much did you hear? His voice was rough. Selena stepped out of the elevator. Enough. Then you know staying here puts you in danger. From who? Marcus? Vincent? Your entire organization? From me. Damien moved closer, close enough that she could see the pulse hammering in his throat. Because Vincent is right. I am distracted. I am making emotional decisions, and that makes me weak in a world where weakness gets you killed. Selena's hands clenched at her sides. Then fire me. Send me back to California. Solve your problem. I can't. Why not? Because... He stopped, jaw tight, like the words were physically painful. Because I don't want to. The confession hung between them. Selena stared at him. At this dangerous, broken man who'd built an empire from blood and violence and refused to let anyone see the human underneath. I need your help, she heard herself say. With the Morrison project, there's legacy code I can't crack. Systems designed to hide information. I've been stuck for 3 days and I'm running out of time. Damien blinked, like he'd expected her to say something entirely different. Now? He asked. Yes, now. For 3 seconds he didn't move. Then he walked past her, swiped his key card. The elevator doors opened again. Show me. Just 7. They worked through the night. Damien pulled up a chair beside her desk, studied the code. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the precision of someone who'd built digital fortresses designed to withstand federal investigations. Here, he pointed at a section of code. This is a false pathway. It looks functional but routes to nowhere. The real access point is hidden in the error handling. He rewrote 3 lines. The system unlocked. Selina stared at the screen. How did you know that? Because I designed systems like this for years, before Blackthorn went legitimate. Damien leaned back, rubbed his eyes. The Morrison family has connections to organizations that make the syndicate look like a charity. Their infrastructure was built by people who understood that the best place to hide something is in plain sight. He walked her through the entire architecture, showed her the hidden layers, the deliberately confusing documentation, the fail-safes designed to destroy data if accessed incorrectly. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, Selina understood the Morrison system better than its own creators. They sat in silence while the city woke up outside the windows. "Thank you," Selina said quietly. Damien didn't look at her. "You would have figured it out eventually." "No. I wouldn't have. I would have failed, lost the contract, proven Vincent right that you made a mistake giving it to me." "Vincent doesn't know what he's talking about." "Doesn't he?" Selina turned in her chair to face Damien directly. "You are distracted. You did take a risk with the Morrison project, and people are noticing." Damien's hands clenched on the armrests. "Are you saying you want to leave?" "I'm saying I don't want to be the reason you lose control of your empire. You're not—" He stopped, drew a breath. "This isn't your fault, Selina. The politics, the power plays, Marcus and Vincent positioning themselves. That's always been there. It just what? It just matters more now." His voice dropped. "Because for the first time in 15 years, I actually care whether I lose something." The words hit her like a physical blow. Selina couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at Damien while something dangerous and terrifying bloomed in her chest. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "I know. We work together. I'm your employee. This is completely inappropriate. I know. Then why?" Damien stood abruptly, walked to the windows, pressed his palm against the glass like he needed something solid to ground him. "Because I'm tired," he said quietly. "Tired of pretending I don't notice when you walk into a room. Tired of forcing myself not to look at you. Tired of lying to everyone, including myself, about why I gave you the Morrison project." He turned to face her. "I didn't give it to you because I thought you could handle it. I gave it to you because I wanted an excuse to work with you, to be near you, to have conversations that weren't about death and money and control." Selina stood on shaking legs. "Damien, you should go home." His voice went flat, professional, walls slamming back into place. "Get some sleep. The Morrison project is due in 2 weeks. You'll need to be sharp." "Don't do that." She crossed the room, stood close enough to see the exhaustion in his face, the carefully controlled tension. "Don't shut me out after saying something like that. It's safer for both of us if I do." "I don't want safe." The words came out before she could stop them. "I want—" His phone rang. The shrill sound cut through the moment like a blade. Damien pulled it from his pocket, read the screen. His entire expression went cold and hard. "I have to take this." He walked away, answered in a voice Selina couldn't hear. Then he came back 90 seconds later looking like death. "There's been an attack," he said flatly. "One of our operations in Brooklyn. 4 men dead. Marcus is missing." Selina's stomach dropped. "Oh my!" "Go home. Lock your door. Don't answer for anyone except building security." Damien was already moving toward the elevator. "And Selina—" He stopped, looked back at her. "If anyone asks, you don't know me. You've never been to that warehouse. You're just an employee, nothing more. Understand?" She nodded mutely. Then he was gone. And Selina stood alone in the empty office while the sun rose over Manhattan, and the growing certainty settled in her chest that she'd just crossed a line there was no coming back from. Selina didn't go home. She stood in the empty office watching dawn paint Manhattan in shades of orange and gold while her mind replayed Damien's last words on an endless loop. 4 men dead. Marcus is missing. If anyone asks, you don't know me. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her desk and forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. the way her mother had taught her during panic attacks after her father left. But this wasn't a panic attack. This was the moment when fantasy collided with reality and shattered into 1,000 razor-sharp pieces. Damien DeLuca wasn't some complicated anti-hero from a movie. He was a criminal, a killer, the kind of man who received phone calls about dead bodies before sunrise and responded by issuing instructions like he was coordinating a business meeting. And Selena had stood in his office 90 seconds earlier wanting to kiss him. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it with trembling fingers. Text message, unknown number, stay inside today. Don't leave your apartment. Don't answer your door. This is not a suggestion. Selena read it 3 times. Then she grabbed her laptop and bag and walked to the elevator on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The morning commute was already starting. Professionals flooding the subway. Everyone looking exhausted and caffeinated and normal. Selena sat wedged between a woman reading a romance novel and a teenager with headphones blasting music loud enough to hear 3 seats away. Nobody knew. Nobody had any idea that somewhere in Brooklyn 4 people were dead and a mafia war might be starting and the most dangerous man in New York had just told her to hide. The train lurched into her station. Selena climbed the stairs to street level. Her building looked exactly the same as always. Crumbling brick, rusted fire escape, the smell of garbage from the alley mixing with exhaust from passing cars. She used her key, climbed 6 flights, unlocked her apartment door, stopped. The door was already open, just slightly, maybe an inch, enough to see darkness beyond. Selena's heart stopped beating. She should run, should turn around and sprint back down the stairs and call the police or building security or anyone. Instead, she pushed the door open slowly. The apartment was dark, curtains drawn, no movement, no sound except her own breathing harsh and fast in the silence. Then someone spoke from the shadows near her bed. "Close the door." A woman's voice, cold, controlled. Selena's hand found the light switch, flipped it. A stranger sat on her bed. Mid-40s, severe features, wearing a charcoal suit that screamed federal law enforcement, dark hair pulled back tight enough to hurt, and eyes that studied Selena the way scientists studied bacteria. "Who are you?" Selena's voice cracked. "How did you get in here?" "Special Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI." The woman pulled out a badge, held it up long enough for Selena to see the seal. "And I walked in. Your building security is embarrassing." Selena's legs went weak. She grabbed the door frame, FBI, in her apartment, waiting in the dark. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said. "Haven't you?" Torres stood, walked to the window, pulled the curtain back an inch to look at the street below. "You've been working for Damien DeLuca for 3 weeks, living in an apartment his company pays for, using resources his organization provides. That makes you an accessory." "I'm a designer. I work in technology. You work for a criminal enterprise." Torres let the curtain fall, turned to face Selena directly. "Blackthorn Holdings is a front, a way to launder money from drug trafficking, illegal gambling, extortion, and a dozen other operations we've been investigating for 5 years. Every person on that payroll is complicit." Selena's chest felt like it was being crushed. "I didn't know." "Yes, you did." Torres stepped closer. "You've been to the warehouse in Brooklyn. You've met Marcus Ricci, one of DeLuca's top enforcers. You've worked directly with Damien on projects that involved encrypted systems designed specifically to hide illegal activity." "How did she know about the warehouse?" "About Marcus." "Were you following me?" "We've been following everyone connected to DeLuca for 18 months. Torres pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, turned it to face Selena. A photograph. Selena and Damien in the warehouse. The angle suggested surveillance cameras. Long-range lens. She was standing close to him, his hand on her elbow. The image looked intimate, protective, damaging. "That was taken 6 days ago," Torres said. "The night before Marcus Ricci started planning an attack against a rival organization, an attack that resulted in 4 deaths this morning." Selena couldn't breathe. "I had nothing to do with that. But you were there when the planning started. In the warehouse where DeLuca coordinates his operations. That makes you a witness, possibly an accomplice." Torres's voice went flat. "Unless you cooperate." The word hung in the air like smoke. Selena sank onto the edge of her bed. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. What do you want? Information. Torres sat beside her, close enough that Selena could smell her perfume, something expensive and professional. DeLuca is careful. He doesn't leave evidence, doesn't make mistakes. Everyone who works for him is either too terrified or too loyal to talk. But you, she studied Selena's face. You're different. You're not from his world. You still have a conscience. I don't know anything useful. You know more than you think. His routines, his associates, where he goes, who he talks to. The systems you've been working on, those contain information we need. Access codes, encrypted files, communication channels. Selena's stomach turned over. You want me to spy on him. I want you to help us put a monster in prison where he belongs. Torres's voice softened slightly. I know what he is, Selena. I know he's charming, intelligent, probably made you feel special, like you're the only person who sees the real him. That's what predators do. They find vulnerable people and make them feel important. The words hit like punches. 4 people died this morning, Torres continued. 4 human beings with families, with lives. And that's just today. DeLuca has been running his organization for 15 years. How many do you think he's killed in that time? How many lives has he destroyed? Selena closed her eyes, saw Damien's face, the photograph of the bruised teenage boy, the way he touched her hand during takeoff, the exhaustion in his expression when he admitted he was tired of pretending. I need time to think, she whispered. You don't have time. Torres stood, pulled a business card from her pocket, set it on the nightstand. DeLuca is smart enough to know we're closing in. He'll start cutting loose ends soon, making sure nobody can testify against him. You're a loose end, Selena. The question is whether you cut yourself free before he does it for you. She walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the knob. Call me within 24 hours, or I'll assume you've made your choice. Then she left. The door clicked shut. Selena sat alone in her apartment while sunlight crept through the curtains and her entire world collapsed around her. Timon. She didn't call Torres. Didn't go to work. Spent the day pacing her tiny apartment while her mind tore itself apart trying to decide what was true and what was manipulation. Damien was a criminal. That part wasn't in question. She'd seen the warehouse, the armed men, the casual violence. But a monster? The man who'd shown her his childhood photograph? Who'd worked beside her through the night explaining code with infinite patience? Who'd admitted he was tired of pretending? That man didn't feel like a monster. But maybe that was the point. Maybe Torres was right. Maybe Selena was just another vulnerable person who'd been manipulated by someone who understood exactly which buttons to push. Her phone buzzed constantly. Victoria, asking where she was, whether she was sick, saying the Morrison project couldn't afford delays. Selena ignored every message. At 6 p.m., someone knocked on her door. She froze, stared at the peeling paint and rusted hinges. Selena, Damien's voice, muffled by the door but unmistakable. I know you're in there. Open up. Her hands clenched into fists. She should stay silent, should pretend she wasn't home, should... The door unlocked. Damien pushed it open. He had a key. Of course he had a key. His company owned the building. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him, locked it, then just stood there looking at her. He was still wearing the same clothes from this morning. Shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes, a small cut on his jaw that hadn't been there before. And something in his expression that made Selena's chest ache. Exhaustion, bone deep and absolute. You didn't go to work, he said quietly. 4 people died. Selena's voice came out harder than intended. Forgive me for not prioritizing spreadsheets. Damien's jaw tightened. I told you to stay inside, not disappear completely. Victoria has been trying to reach you all day. Well, maybe I needed time to think about whether I want to keep working for someone who gets phone calls about dead bodies before breakfast. Silence filled the apartment. Then Damien crossed to her window, looked out at the brick wall. His shoulders were rigid with tension. The attack this morning wasn't random, he said finally. It was retaliation. A rival organization has been trying to move into our territory for months. We've been pushing back. Last night, they decided to make a statement. By killing 4 people. By killing 4 of my people. He turned to face her. Men who worked for me, who trusted me to protect them. And I failed. The rawness in his voice stopped her cold. Where's Marcus? Selena asked. Safe. In hiding until we figure out who's leaking information. Damien moved closer, close enough that she could see the cut on his jaw was still bleeding slightly. Someone told the rival organization exactly where to hit us. When? How many men would be there? That level of detail only comes from inside. You think someone in your organization is working against you? I know someone is. His eyes met hers. And until I find out who, everyone is a potential threat, including you. The words landed like a slap. Selena took a step back. You think I think the FBI approached you. Damien's voice stayed level, controlled. Probably this morning, probably in this apartment, and I think they offered you a deal. Her face went cold. How did he know? They have surveillance on everyone close to me, Damien continued. I saw Agent Torres enter this building 4 hours ago. Watched her leave 30 minutes later. She didn't arrest you, didn't bring backup, which means she was here to recruit you. He stepped closer, close enough that Selena could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the pulse hammering in his throat, could smell cedar and something darker that made her head spin. So tell me, Selena. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Did you take the deal? She should lie, should protect herself. Instead, she heard herself say, she gave me 24 hours to decide. Damien went completely still. For exactly 5 seconds, he didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at her with those emerald eyes while something dangerous shifted in his expression. Then he laughed, sharp, bitter, the sound of something breaking. Of course she did. He turned away, pressed his palms against the window. And what did Torres offer you? Immunity, witness protection, a fresh start away from the monster? She said you're going to prison, that everyone who works for you is complicit, that I'm a loose end you'll cut free once you don't need me anymore. And you believed her. It wasn't a question. Selena's hands shook. I don't know what to believe. You've been lying to me since the day we met. I've never lied to you. Damien spun around, eyes blazing. Not once. I told you exactly what I am. Showed you the warehouse. Explained how I built this empire. The only person lying here is you. How am I? Because you're standing here pretending you haven't already made your decision. He moved toward her with that controlled violence that made her pulse spike. You think I don't see it? The way you're looking at me? Like I'm something dangerous you need to escape? You are dangerous, the words tore out of her. People die around you. This morning, 4 men who knew exactly what they signed up for. Damien's voice went cold. They weren't innocent. They weren't victims. They were soldiers in a war that's been going on since before you were born. And yes, they died. Because that's what happens in my world. People get hurt. People disappear. People end up in the river with concrete shoes. He stopped directly in front of her. But you already knew that. You knew it the second you saw that warehouse. The second you met Marcus. The second I told you I killed my first man at 18. You knew and you stayed anyway. So don't stand here acting shocked that violence exists in my world. Selena's eyes burned. This isn't about violence. This is about you treating me like I'm your property. Like you own me. I don't own you. Something cracked in his voice. I'm trying to protect you. By telling me to hide? By having me followed? By keeping a key to my apartment? By keeping you alive. Damien's hands clenched at his sides. Because the people who killed my men this morning, they know who you are. They've seen us together. And the moment they decide you're a liability or a weakness or leverage, they will come for you. And there won't be anything I can do to stop it. The apartment went silent. Selena stared at him. At this broken, dangerous man who'd somehow become the center of her entire world in 3 weeks. Then let me go, she whispered. Let me testify. Let the FBI protect me. Let me have a normal life. There is no normal life for you anymore. Damien's voice was brutal in its honesty. The second you walked into that warehouse, you became part of this. The second you worked on those encrypted systems, you became complicit. The FBI doesn't want to protect you, Selena. They want to use you. And the moment you stop being useful, they'll throw you away just like I would. But at least I'd be free. You'd be dead within a year. He stepped even closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Federal witnesses die all the time. Tragic accidents, random violence. The syndicate has people everywhere. In law enforcement, in witness protection, nowhere would be safe. Then what am I supposed to do? Her voice broke. Just stay here? Keep working for you? Pretend everything is fine while people die around me? Damien's hand came up. For one breathless moment, she thought he was going to touch her face. Instead, he pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, turned it toward her. A photograph. Her mother. Outside their old apartment in Los Angeles, carrying groceries, completely unaware of the camera. Selena's blood went cold. What is this? Insurance. Damien's expression was carved from stone. If you talk to the FBI, if you testify, if you do anything except exactly what I tell you, she dies. The world stopped turning. Selena couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at the photograph of her mother while her mind tried to process what was happening. You wouldn't... Her voice came out broken. You wouldn't hurt her. I would do anything to protect what's mine. Damien's voice stayed flat, empty. And right now that includes making sure you don't destroy everything I've built. Tears burned behind Selena's eyes. I trusted you. Then you're more naive than I thought. He turned toward the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. The Morrison project is due in 12 days. I expect you at work tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Don't be late. Then he left. The door clicked shut, and Selena collapsed on her bed while sobs tore through her chest, and the photograph of her mother burned itself into her brain. She went to work the next morning. What choice did she have? Victoria met her at the elevators looking furious. You missed an entire day. The Morrison deadline. I'll have it done on time. Selena's voice was dead, flat. Where do you need me? Victoria blinked, studied her face. Whatever she saw there made her take a step back. Conference room C. The development team has questions about the interface. Selena walked to the conference room on autopilot. For 9 hours, she answered questions, explained design choices, fixed bugs, coordinated with programmers who spoke in technical jargon that required her full attention. She was grateful for it. Grateful for work that consumed her brain completely, that left no room for thinking about Damien or the FBI or her mother's photograph or the growing certainty that she was trapped in a nightmare with no escape. At 6 p.m., Victoria dismissed the team. Everyone filed out except Selena. She sat staring at the screen showing the Morrison interface, the dark design, the aggressive aesthetic, the thing that had impressed Damien because it understood what Blackthorn really was. A cage. Elegant. Expensive. Impossible to escape. You look terrible. Selena looked up. Victoria stood in the doorway. Her usual sharp expression softened slightly into something almost resembling concern. I'm fine, Selena lied. No, you're not. Victoria came in, closed the door, sat across from her. I've worked for Damien DeLuca for 8 years. I've seen what this world does to people who aren't built for it. You're going to break. I won't. You already are. Victoria's voice was quiet, kind even. I can see it. The way you flinch when someone says his name, the way your hands shake when you think nobody's watching. Something happened, and whatever it was, it changed everything. Selena's throat closed. He threatened my mother, she whispered. Victoria didn't look surprised, just tired. Of course he did. That's what he does when people become liabilities. He finds the thing you love most and makes it clear what happens if you betray him. Did he do it to you? My sister. She has 2 kids, beautiful little girls. Victoria's smile was bitter. Damien sent me a photograph of them at their school playground. Never said a word about it. Didn't need to. I understood. Selena felt sick. How do you live with it? By accepting that this is my life now. By being good at my job so I stay valuable. By never, not even for a second, letting myself believe I can escape. Victoria leaned forward. You need to understand something. Damien isn't the villain in some story where love conquers all. He's a survivor, and survivors do whatever necessary to stay alive, including destroying the people who get too close. Then why keep working for him? Because the alternative is worse. Victoria stood, walked to the window. I tried leaving once, 4 years ago. Got a job offer in Seattle, amazing salary, fresh start. I was going to take it. She touched the glass. 3 days before I was supposed to leave, my sister's husband got arrested. Possession with intent to distribute. Enough drugs in his car to put him away for 20 years. The charges disappeared 12 hours after I turned down the Seattle job. Message received. Selena's hands clenched into fists. So what am I supposed to do? Just accept that I'm trapped? No. Victoria turned to face her. You're supposed to decide whether you're a survivor like me, or whether you're someone who'd rather die than live in a cage. That's not a choice. It's the only choice that matters in Damien's world. Victoria walked to the door, stopped. The Morrison project is almost finished. You're talented enough that Blackthorn will offer you a permanent position, probably with a significant salary increase. Benefits, maybe even equity. She opened the door. Just remember that every dollar comes with strings, and eventually those strings become chains you can't break. Then she left. Selena sat alone in the conference room while Manhattan glowed outside the windows, and the truth settled in her chest like lead. She was trapped, completely, absolutely, with no way out. Unless her phone buzzed. Text message. Agent Torres. Offer expires in 6 hours. After that, you're on your own. Last chance. Selena stared at the message, then at the Morrison interface on the screen in front of her, then at the business card Torres had left on her nightstand, the one she'd been carrying in her pocket for 36 hours like a talisman. The FBI wanted her to spy, to gather evidence, to help them destroy Damien DeLuca. And if she did, her mother died. But if she didn't, she spent the rest of her life as Damien's prisoner, working for him, afraid of him, becoming someone like Victoria who'd accepted captivity as the price of survival. Selena's hands started shaking. She pulled out her phone, stared at Torres's number. Then she did the only thing that made sense anymore. She called. Ichit. They met in a coffee shop in Queens at midnight. Torres sat in a back corner booth wearing civilian clothes that somehow made her look more dangerous than the suit. She didn't smile when Selena slid into the seat across from her. You're late. I had to make sure I wasn't followed. Selena's voice was steady, controlled. Everything inside her was screaming, but she kept it locked down tight. Were you? I don't think so. Damien's focused on the attack, on finding whoever's leaking information. He doesn't suspect me yet. Torres pulled out a tablet, slid it across the table. This is a secure communication system, encrypted, untraceable. You'll use it to send us information, photos, documents, recordings, anything that helps us build a case. Selena looked at the tablet. Her reflection stared back from the black screen. What about my mother? Already in protective custody. She doesn't know it yet. We have agents watching her building. If DeLuca makes a move, we'll extract her immediately. He has people everywhere, in law enforcement. He said he was lying. Torres's voice cut through her fear. Standard intimidation tactic. Make you think we're compromised so you don't trust us. But I promise you, your mother is safe. Selena wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. What do you need me to do? Torres opened a file on the tablet, showed her a photograph of a man Selena didn't recognize, late 50s, expensive suit, cold eyes. Vincent DeLuca, Damien's uncle, second in command of the syndicate. We believe he's planning to take control, stage a coup. We need proof. Communications, meeting locations, financial transfers, anything that shows he's working against Damien. Why would Vincent turn against his own nephew? Because power is the only thing that matters in their world. Torres closed the file. Damien's been distracted lately, making emotional decisions. Vincent sees weakness. He's building alliances with other families. The attack this morning? We think Vincent orchestrated it, made it look like a rival organization to destabilize Damien's control. Selena's chest went tight. You're saying Vincent killed those 4 men? We're saying Vincent is playing a long game, and you're going to help us prove it. Torres stood. There's a charity gala this weekend. Blackthorn Holdings is hosting. All the major players will be there, including Vincent. Damien will probably bring you as his guest. He won't. He will, because you're his designer, his project. He'll want to show you off. Prove to everyone that he's still in control. Torres dropped cash on the table for the coffee. Wear this. She pulled a small jewelry box from her pocket. Inside was a necklace. Simple, elegant, the kind of thing someone might wear to a formal event. It's a recording device, high quality, picks up conversations within 15 feet. Wear it to the gala. Stay close to Vincent. Get him talking. Selina picked up the necklace. The metal felt cold against her fingers. And if Damien finds out, then you run, and you pray we get to you before he does. Torres walked toward the exit, stopped. You made the right choice, Selina. When this is over, you'll have your life back. Your mother will be safe, and Damien DeLuca will be in a cell where he belongs. Then she disappeared into the night, leaving Selina alone in the coffee shop with a tablet she didn't know how to use and a necklace that felt like a death sentence burning a hole in her pocket. The Morrison project went live on Thursday afternoon. Selina stood in Conference Room A, surrounded by executives from both Blackthorn Holdings and the Morrison family's corporate representatives, while the new system loaded on the main screen. Her palms were sweating. The necklace Torres had given her hung cold against her collarbone, hidden beneath the collar of her blouse. She hadn't seen Damien in 4 days, not since he'd shown her the photograph of her mother and turned her entire world into a prison cell. Victoria said he was handling the aftermath of the Brooklyn attack, meeting with other families, consolidating power, making sure everyone understood that the DeLuca syndicate wasn't weak despite the losses. But Selina felt his presence everywhere, in the armed security that had appeared outside her building, in the black SUV that followed her to work every morning, in the way Victoria watched her with knowing, tired eyes that said, "Welcome to the cage." The Morrison interface loaded perfectly, clean, efficient, the aggressive dark aesthetic that made users pay attention. Executives nodded, made approving sounds. The Morrison representatives looked genuinely impressed. Then Damien walked into the room. Everyone stood immediately, like soldiers snapping to attention. He was wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Selina's annual salary. Hair perfectly styled, no visible exhaustion, no trace of the man who'd threatened her mother, just cold, controlled power. His eyes swept the room, found Selina, held for exactly 3 seconds, then moved on like she was furniture. "Sit down." His voice cut through the nervous energy. Everyone sat. "Show me what we have." Victoria took point, walked Damien through the interface, explained the improvements, the increased efficiency, the projected cost savings. Damien watched without expression. Then he turned to the Morrison representatives. "Thoughts?" The lead representative, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a British accent, smiled. "It's exceptional work, Mr. DeLuca. Exactly what we needed. I believe this partnership will be extraordinarily profitable." "Good." Damien stood. "Then we're done here. Legal will handle the contracts." He walked toward the door, stopped beside Selina's chair. "My office. Now." Then he left. The room stayed silent until his footsteps faded down the hallway. Selina's heart hammered against her ribs. She stood on shaking legs, followed him. The private elevator rose smoothly to the 72nd floor. Selina stared at her reflection in the polished doors. The necklace was invisible beneath her collar, the recording device active. She'd turned it on this morning following Torres's instructions. Stay close to Vincent, get him talking. But Vincent wasn't here, only Damien. The doors opened. Damien's office looked exactly the same, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture. The city spread beneath him like a kingdom waiting to be claimed. He stood at the windows with his back to her, hands in his pockets, absolutely still. "Close the door." Selina closed it. Silence filled the office like water filling lungs. Then Damien spoke without turning around. "The Morrison project was perfect. Better than I expected. You delivered exactly what I asked for despite everything else happening. Thank you." Her voice came out steady, controlled. "Don't thank me. You did the work. You earned the result." He turned to face her. "Blackthorn Holdings wants to offer you a permanent position. Head of design. Significant salary increase, benefits, equity in the company." Everything Victoria had predicted. "What's the catch?" Selina asked. Damien's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. "The catch is that you'll belong to me completely. Your work, your time, your loyalty, everything. I already belong to you. You made that clear when you showed me my mother's photograph." Something flickered in his expression. There and gone, so fast she almost missed it. That was necessary, was it? Selina took a step closer. The recording device was active, capturing every word. Or was it just you doing what you always do, controlling people through fear because you can't trust them any other way? Damien's jaw tightened. Be very careful, Selina. Why? What are you going to do? Threaten someone else I love? Destroy my life more than you already have? She moved closer, close enough to see the tension radiating from him. You told me you wanted people who could look at the monster and decide whether they could live with it. Well, I looked, and you know what I saw? What? Someone who's so terrified of being powerless again that he can't tell the difference between protection and imprisonment. For exactly 5 seconds, Damien didn't move. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her wrist. Not hard, not painful, but firm enough to stop her from pulling away. You think you understand me? His voice was low, dangerous. You think 3 weeks gives you the right to analyze me like some psychology experiment, but you don't know anything. Then tell me. Selina held his gaze. Tell me why you threaten the people who care about you, why you push everyone away, why you're so convinced that showing weakness will destroy you. Because it will. The words came out harsh, raw. My father showed weakness. He trusted the wrong person, and he died bleeding out on a sidewalk over $20. My mother showed weakness. She believed people would help us, and she spent 5 years working herself to death trying to survive. I watched both of them break because they weren't strong enough. His grip on her wrist tightened fractionally. So yes, I control people through fear. I threaten the things they love. I make sure nobody ever forgets what happens when they cross me. Because that's how you survive in my world. That's how you build something that lasts. And you end up alone. Selina's voice softened. Surrounded by people who are too terrified to be real with you. Who say whatever you want to hear. Who'd run the second they thought they could escape. Is that really surviving? Damien released her wrist, stepped back, turned away. The gala is tomorrow night, 8 p.m., Blackthorn Tower Ballroom. You'll attend as my guest. The sudden shift gave her whiplash. What? Every major player in New York will be there. Politicians, business leaders, heads of other families. They need to see that Blackthorn is stronger than ever, that the attack in Brooklyn didn't weaken us. He walked to his desk, pulled out a black envelope, held it out. Dress code is formal. There's a card inside for whatever you need. Gown, shoes, whatever. Selina took the envelope with numb fingers. You want me to pretend everything is fine, stand beside you while you show off for criminals. I want you to do your job. His voice went flat. You're head of design now. That means representing Blackthorn at public events, looking professional, acting like you belong in my world. I don't belong in your world. Then you should have run when you had the chance. Damien met her eyes. The elevator is waiting. Go home. Rest. Tomorrow night, I need you perfect. It wasn't a request. Selina turned toward the door, stopped with her hand on the knob. You're going to lose everything, she said quietly. Not because of the FBI, not because of rival families, but because you can't stop destroying the things you care about. She didn't wait for a response, just walked out and left him standing alone in his office, overlooking a city that feared him and nobody who actually knew him. The gala dress was midnight blue, silk that moved like water, cut to suggest without revealing. The kind of gown that cost more than Selina's monthly rent. She stood in front of her apartment's cracked mirror Friday evening and barely recognized herself. Hair professionally styled, makeup applied by someone who'd shown up at her building that afternoon with a toolkit and Victoria's instructions. Heels that added 3 inches and made her legs look endless. And the necklace. Torres's recording device hung against her collarbone. Elegant, subtle. Impossible to distinguish from normal jewelry unless you knew what to look for. Selina touched it with shaking fingers. Tonight she'd get close to Vincent DeLuca, record his conversations, gather evidence of the coup, help the FBI destroy Damien's empire from the inside, betray the man who'd threatened her mother but also showed her his childhood photograph and admitted he was tired of pretending. Her phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number, but she knew who it was. Car is downstairs. Don't keep me waiting. Selina grabbed the small clutch Victoria had sent over, took one last look at herself in the mirror, then walked downstairs into whatever nightmare was waiting. The black SUV was identical to the one that had taken her to the warehouse, but this time Damien sat in the back seat waiting. He was wearing a tuxedo that should have been illegal. Perfect fit. Black bow tie. His hair styled back from his face in a way that made the sharp angles even more devastating. He looked like violence wrapped in elegance. Selena slid into the seat beside him. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly. Damien didn't speak, just studied her with those emerald eyes that saw everything. "You look beautiful," he said finally. The compliment hit harder than it should have. "Thank you. But you're terrified. I can see it. Your hands are shaking. Your breathing is shallow. What are you afraid of?" "Everything. You, the FBI, Vincent, this whole impossible situation." "I've never been to something like this before," Selena said instead. "I don't know how to act around these people." "Act like you belong, like you have every right to be there. Confidence is the only thing that matters." Damien's voice stayed neutral. "People will try to intimidate you, make you feel small. Don't let them. You're mine tonight. That means you're untouchable." The possessive edge in his voice made her stomach flip. "What if someone asks about my background, where I came from?" "Tell them the truth. You're from California. You're talented. I hired you because you're the best at what you do." He looked out the window at Manhattan rushing past. The moment you start lying is the moment people smell weakness. The irony was devastating. Selena was drowning in lies, wearing a recording device, working with the FBI, planning to betray him to save herself. And he was telling her to be honest. The SUV pulled up to Blackthorn Tower. Red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance. Photographers lined both sides. Security everywhere. "Ready?" Damien asked. Selena nodded mutely. He stepped out first. Cameras flashed immediately. Shouted questions, his name echoing from a dozen directions. He ignored all of it, just turned and offered her his hand. She took it. The moment her fingers touched his, everything else disappeared. The cameras, the crowd, the fear. Just Damien looking at her like she was the only thing that existed. They walked the red carpet together. His hand settled at the small of her back. Possessive, protective, guiding her through the chaos with absolute certainty. Inside the tower, the ballroom had been transformed into something from a movie. Crystal chandeliers. White flowers everywhere. Tables set with silver and crystal that probably cost more than most people's cars. A string quartet playing something classical in the corner. And people. Hundreds of people in tuxedos and gowns, drinking champagne, talking in clusters. Every single one of them radiating the kind of power that came from money or violence or both. Selena's chest tightened. Damien's hand pressed slightly against her back. "Breathe. You're doing fine." They moved through the room. Damien introduced her to people whose names she immediately forgot. Politicians, CEOs, a federal judge who laughed at something Damien said and looked at Selena like she was interesting prey. Everyone wanted Damien's attention. Everyone feared him. And standing beside him, Selena felt that fear directed at her too. Like she'd absorbed some of his danger just by proximity. Then she saw Vincent. He stood near the bar, talking to two men she didn't recognize. Same cold eyes from Torres's photograph. Same expensive suit. Same aura of controlled threat. Damien's uncle, the man supposedly planning a coup. "I see him," Damien murmured in her ear. "Stay close. Don't react to anything he says." They approached slowly. Vincent looked up. His expression shifted into something that might have been a smile if it reached his eyes. "Damien, glad you could make it to your own party." "Vincent," Damien's voice stayed neutral. "I don't believe you've met Selena Moretti, my head of design." Vincent's gaze slid to her, lingered, made her skin crawl. "The girl from the warehouse. I remember." He extended his hand. Vincent DeLuca, Damien's uncle, and occasionally his conscience when he forgets he has one. Selena shook his hand. His grip was cold, firm, the handshake of someone calculating exactly how much pressure to use. "Nice to meet you." "Is it?" Vincent released her hand, turned back to Damien. "We need to talk, privately. There are concerns about the Brooklyn situation." "Not tonight." Damien's voice went hard. Tonight is about showing strength, unity. We'll handle internal matters Monday. The matters won't wait until Monday. Vincent stepped closer. People are asking questions about your judgment, about whether recent distractions have compromised your ability to lead. The air between them went electric. Selena's hand moved unconsciously to the necklace, making sure it was positioned correctly, recording every word. My judgment, Damien said softly, is the only reason this family still exists. You'd do well to remember that. I remember plenty. Vincent's smile turned sharp. I remember when you were 16 years old and I taught you how to survive, how to fight, how to build this empire from nothing. So when I tell you that people are losing faith, you should listen. People lose faith when they see weakness. Do I look weak to you? You look distracted. Vincent's eyes flicked to Selena. And distraction in our world is the same as weakness. Damien's hand tightened on Selena's back. She has nothing to do with this. Doesn't she? Vincent leaned in, lowered his voice, but the recording device caught every word. Marcus is still missing. 4 of our best men are dead. The feds are circling, and you're playing house with some designer you met 3 weeks ago. That's not the nephew I raised. Then maybe you raised me wrong. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Vincent's expression went cold. Dangerous. Be very careful, Damien. Family or not, there are limits to what I'll tolerate. Then I suggest you expand your tolerance. Damien turned away, guided Selena toward the dance floor. This conversation is over. Behind them, Vincent stayed at the bar, watching, and the expression on his face made Selena's blood run cold. Because it wasn't anger, it was satisfaction, like Damien had just played directly into his hands. Shit. The music shifted into something slow. Damien pulled Selena onto the dance floor. His hand settled at her waist. The other took her hand. They moved together smoothly despite her shaking legs. That was deliberate, Selena whispered. You wanted him to threaten you. I wanted to see how far he'd go, whether he'd challenge me publicly. Damien's voice was low, controlled. He's testing boundaries, seeing if I'll back down. And will you? Never. His eyes met hers. Vincent thinks I'm weak because I care about you. He thinks caring is the same as vulnerability. He's wrong. Is he? Selena's chest felt tight. Because from where I'm standing, caring about me has done nothing but create problems for you. You're not a problem. Damien's grip tightened slightly. He stopped, jaw tight, like the words physically hurt to say. What? Selena pressed. What am I? Something I didn't plan for. His voice dropped. Something that scares me more than bullets or feds or rival families, because all of those I know how to fight. But you. The music swelled around them. Other couples moved past, oblivious, lost in their own worlds. You make me want things I swore I'd never want, Damien continued quietly. Safety, peace, someone who knows what I am and stays anyway, and that terrifies me. Because the moment I let myself want those things is the moment I become vulnerable again, the moment someone can hurt me. Selena's throat closed. So what happens now? She whispered. Now we finish this dance. We smile for the cameras. We show everyone that Damien DeLuca is still in control. His eyes stayed locked on hers. And then we survive whatever comes next. The song ended. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Damien released her, stepped back, the walls slamming into place so fast it gave her whiplash. I need to talk to the other families. Stay near Victoria. Don't wander off alone. Then he walked away, leaving Selena standing in the middle of the dance floor while her heart tried to break through her ribs and the recording device captured everything, including the moment when Damien DeLuca admitted he was falling for her. Victoria found her 20 minutes later. You look like you're about to pass out. Victoria pressed a champagne flute into her hand. Drink. It helps. Selena drank. The champagne was dry, expensive, did nothing to settle her nerves. How do you do this? She asked. Stand here surrounded by criminals and politicians and people who'd kill you without blinking. How do you pretend it's normal? Practice. And the understanding that none of this is real. Victoria gestured at the ballroom. The dresses, the champagne, the polite conversations. It's all theater. Everyone here is performing, The moment you forget, that is the moment you get eaten alive. What role am I playing? The woman who tamed Damien DeLuca. Victoria's smile was thin. Even if it's temporary, even if it destroys you, that's the story everyone wants to believe. And what if I don't want that story? Then you should have run when you had the chance. The second person to tell her that. Selena scanned the ballroom, found Damien near the far wall surrounded by men in expensive suits, all of them listening intently while he spoke, all of them looking like they'd follow him into hell if he asked. And Vincent, standing alone by the windows, watching Damien with an expression that made Selena's stomach turn. Not anger, calculation. Vincent is planning something, Selena said quietly. Victoria followed her gaze. Vincent is always planning something. He's been trying to take control of the syndicate for 10 years. Damien blocks him every time. What if this time is different? Then we all better pray Damien sees it coming. Victoria finished her champagne. Stay close to me. The gala is almost over. Once the speeches start, we can... Glass shattered. Everyone turned. Near the entrance, a man had dropped his champagne flute. He stood swaying slightly, face pale, eyes wide. Then he collapsed. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. People screamed, rushed toward the entrance. Security converged. Someone shouted for a doctor. Selena stood frozen while her brain tried processing what was happening. The man on the floor was convulsing, foam at his mouth, his body arching in ways that didn't look human, poisoned. Someone had poisoned him. At Damien's gala. In front of everyone. She found Damien in the crowd. He was already moving toward the entrance, face carved from stone. No panic. No fear. Just cold calculation. Then someone grabbed her arm. Selena spun around. Vincent stood behind her. His grip was iron. His voice was low. You need to come with me, now, before this gets worse. Let me go, Listen to me very carefully. Vincent's eyes bored into hers. That man who just collapsed? He works for me. And his drink was poisoned with something meant for someone else, which means there's an assassin in this room. And their target, he glanced toward Damien, is standing right there making himself an easy shot. Selena's blood went cold. You're lying. Am I? Vincent released her arm. Then stay here. Watch what happens. But when the bullets start flying, don't say I didn't warn you. He walked away, disappeared into the crowd. Selena stood paralyzed while security tried to control the chaos, and the poisoned man stopped convulsing and went completely still. And somewhere in the ballroom, a killer was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She had to warn Damien, had to tell him to get out, to run, to survive. But Vincent's words echoed in her head. His drink was poisoned with something meant for someone else. What if Vincent was the one planning the assassination? What if this whole thing was designed to create chaos so he could take control? What if Selena warning Damien was exactly what Vincent wanted, to prove she was compromised, to prove she couldn't be trusted? The recording device felt like lead against her collarbone, capturing everything, including her standing here frozen while Damien walked into a trap. Selena made a choice. She pushed through the crowd, ignored Victoria calling her name, reached Damien just as he was giving orders to security. You need to leave. Her voice came out desperate. Right now. Vincent said... Gunshots exploded through the ballroom. 3, 4, 5. Deafening in the enclosed space. People screamed, dropped to the floor, stampeded toward exits. Damien grabbed Selena, threw her down, covered her body with his. More shots, glass shattering, someone crying, then silence. Selena's ears rang. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it would break through her ribs. Damien's weight pressed her into the floor, his breath hot against her neck. Are you hurt? His voice was rough. No, I can't. He pulled her up. They stayed low, moved toward the wall. Around them, the ballroom was chaos. Bodies on the floor, blood on the white flowers, security with weapons drawn converging on a balcony overlooking the ballroom where the shots had come from. There, Damien pointed. A figure dressed in black, moving fast toward a service exit. Stay here, Damien commanded. Don't! But he was already running, chasing the shooter through the chaos with the kind of focused violence that made her understand exactly what he was capable of. Selena stood pressed against the wall, shaking, the recording device still active, capturing everything. Then Victoria appeared beside her, face pale, dress torn. "We need to go, now, before—" An explosion rocked the building. The floor shook. Lights flickered. Somewhere below them, something massive had just detonated. "The parking garage," Victoria gasped. "They bombed the parking garage." And Selina realized with horrible clarity what was happening. This wasn't just an assassination attempt. It was a coup. Vincent was making his move, and Damien was walking directly into it. The explosion's echo still rang through Blackthorn Tower when Selina made her decision. She grabbed Victoria's arm. Where would Vincent go? If he's staging a coup, where would he coordinate from? Victoria's eyes went wide. You think Vincent? The poisoning, the shooting, the bomb. It's all designed to create chaos, to make Damien look weak, to give Vincent an excuse to take control. Selina's voice was steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. Where would he go? Victoria's face went pale. The operations center, sub-level 3. It's where Damien coordinates everything. Communications, security feeds, access to every part of the syndicate. Her hands shook. If Vincent takes that room, he controls everything. Selina was already moving. She kicked off her heels, hiked up her gown, ran toward the service stairs with Victoria calling after her. Selina, wait. You can't. Security will shoot you. But Selina was already gone. Down the emergency stairwell, taking steps 3 at a time. The silk gown tearing as she moved, her bare feet slapping against concrete, the recording device bouncing against her chest with every stride. She had to reach Vincent before Damien did. Had to get evidence, proof, something the FBI could use. Had to end this before more people died. Sub-level 3 was industrial. Concrete floors, exposed pipes, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. The operations center door stood at the end of a long hallway. Steel, keypad lock. 2 armed guards posted outside. Selina slowed to a walk, tried to control her breathing. Look calm. Professional. The guards' hands moved to their weapons. This area is restricted. Vincent DeLuca sent for me. Selina's voice didn't shake. He said it was urgent. The guards exchanged glances. One spoke into his radio, listened to the response, then stepped aside. He's expecting you. The door unlocked with a heavy click. Selina pushed it open, stepped inside. The operations center looked like something from a spy movie. Wall-to-wall screens showing security feeds from across the city, computers monitoring communications, maps covered in digital markers, and Vincent DeLuca standing in the center of it all like a general commanding his army. He turned when she entered, smiled, that cold expression that never reached his eyes. I was wondering if you'd figure it out. His voice was conversational, pleasant even. You're smarter than Damien gives you credit for. Selina forced herself to stay calm, to keep him talking. The recording device was still active, capturing everything. This was all you, the attack in Brooklyn, the poisoning tonight, the explosion. Not all of it. Vincent walked to one of the screens, pulled up footage of the ballroom. The Brooklyn attack was real, a genuine move by a rival family, but I saw the opportunity, used it to make Damien look distracted, vulnerable, started planting seeds of doubt. He tapped another screen. Security footage from earlier tonight. The poisoned man accepting a drink from a waiter. That was easy. Pay the right person, use the right substance, create chaos. Vincent's smile widened. The shooting was theatrical, blanks mostly, just enough to terrify everyone. Make them remember that violence can reach even Blackthorn Tower. And the bomb? Real, but small. Positioned to destroy vehicles, not people. I'm not a monster, Selina. I don't kill unnecessarily. He turned to face her. I just remove obstacles. And right now, my nephew is the biggest obstacle between me and what this family needs. Which is what? Your control? Leadership that isn't compromised by emotional attachments. Vincent's eyes hardened. Damien has built something extraordinary. I won't deny that. But he's lost focus. Started making decisions based on feelings instead of strategy. That warehouse trip, taking you to meet Marcus, giving you the Morrison project, all of it screams weakness. It screams trust, Selina shot back. Something you clearly don't understand. Trust gets you killed in our world. Vincent moved closer. I raised Damien, taught him everything he knows, watched him build the DeLuca Syndicate into the most powerful organization in New York. And I'm not going to watch him destroy it because he fell in love with some girl from California. The words hit like a slap. Fell in love. He doesn't love me, Selena said. Dami. Selena, doesn't he? Vincent laughed. He threatened you to keep you loyal, then spent every day since looking miserable. He brought you to the gala, danced with you, stood on that floor tonight ready to take a bullet to protect you. That's not strategy, that's love. And love is the one thing Damien DeLuca can't afford. Behind Vincent, the screen showed live feeds. Damien moving through the tower, chasing the shooter, security teams converging, the controlled chaos of a man trying to regain control. So what now? Selena kept her voice steady. You take over? Damien just accepts it? Damien will be dead within the hour. Vincent said it like he was discussing the weather. The shooter is one of mine, leading him to a prearranged location, somewhere isolated, no witnesses, one bullet, clean, efficient. By morning, I'll have called a family meeting, explained that Damien died protecting the syndicate from enemies, that his last words were asking me to take over, to keep everyone safe. Selena's blood went ice cold. You're going to kill your own nephew. I'm going to save my family from his weakness. Vincent's voice hardened. And you're going to help me, because that necklace you're wearing, the one you keep touching nervously, I know what it is. Her hand froze halfway to her throat. FBI standard issue recording device, audio only, probably being monitored remotely. Vincent pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. I've been jamming the signal since you walked in. Everything you've recorded in the last 3 minutes, static, useless in court. He stepped closer. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of here, go back upstairs. Tell Agent Torres that you couldn't get anything useful, that the attempt failed, and then you're going to disappear. New identity, new city. Enough money to start over somewhere Damien's ghosts can't find you. And if I refuse, then you'll die with them. Vincent's voice went flat, empty. I don't want to kill you, Selena. You're collateral damage, an unfortunate casualty of Damien's poor judgment, but I will if necessary. So choose. Life somewhere else, or death here beside a man who is always going to destroy himself. The operations center went silent. On the screens, Damien moved deeper into the tower, following the shooter, walking into Vincent's trap. Selena thought about Agent Torres, about the recording device that had failed, about her mother supposedly in protective custody, about 3 weeks of lies and manipulation and impossible choices. Then she thought about Damien's face when he admitted he was tired of pretending, about the photograph of the bruised teenage boy who'd killed to survive, about the way he'd covered her body with his when the shooting started. And she made her choice. You're wrong about one thing, Selena said quietly. What's that? Damien isn't going to die tonight. She pulled the necklace over her head, held it up. Because I'm not the only one wearing a wire. Vincent's expression flickered. What are you... The operations center door exploded inward. FBI agents poured through, tactical gear, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Vincent spun toward the screens, toward the exits, but there were already agents at every access point. He'd been surrounded. Vincent DeLuca, you're under arrest. Agent Torres stepped through the chaos, her weapon trained on Vincent's chest. Conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, about 15 other charges we'll add once we go through these computers. Vincent's face went white, then red. You can't. I have immunity. Deals with federal prosecutors. Had immunity, Torres corrected, until you confessed to orchestrating tonight's attack on recording equipment we installed in this room 3 hours ago. She gestured to the ceiling, to the small cameras hidden in the ventilation. You were so focused on jamming Selena's necklace that you never thought to check for our backup. Vincent looked at Selena, real emotion finally breaking through his controlled mask. Rage. You set me up! No, Selena's voice was steady. You set yourself up. I just gave you enough rope to hang with. Torres moved forward. Agents grabbed Vincent, cuffed him, started reading his rights while he struggled and shouted about lawyers and phone calls and people who'd make this disappear. But it was over. Torres walked to Selena, studied her face. Where's Damien? Following your fake shooter into whatever trap Vincent set. Selena's hands shook. You need to get to him. Now. Before... Already done. Torres pulled out her phone, showed her a live feed. Damien surrounded by federal agents, weapon on the ground, hands behind his head. We arrested him 2 minutes ago, found him in the parking structure with enough evidence of illegal weapons possession to hold him for 72 hours. After that, she glanced at Vincent, being dragged toward the exit. After that, we'll have everything we need to put the entire DeLuca syndicate away permanently. Selena couldn't breathe. You used me. This whole time. The recording device, the threats about my mother, all of it was to get me close enough to Vincent. To save your life, Torres interrupted. Vincent was planning to kill you. Tonight. After Damien died. Clean up all loose ends. We intercepted communications 3 days ago. Had to move fast. Her voice softened slightly. Your mother is fine. She's been in actual protective custody for a week. And you did exactly what we needed. Got Vincent talking, kept him distracted, gave us time to set up the operation. I didn't know. You never told me because you're a terrible liar. Torres almost smiled. If you'd known the plan, Vincent would have seen it on your face. This way, your fear was real, your confusion genuine. He never suspected. Around them, agents were shutting down the operations center, seizing computers, downloading files, dismantling the heart of the DeLuca syndicate piece by piece. What happens to me now? Selena whispered. You go home, write your statement, testify when we need you, and then, Torres hesitated. Then you try to build a normal life, away from all this. And Damien goes to prison for a very long time. Torres's voice was firm. I know you have feelings for him. I saw it in your face every time his name came up. But Selena, he's a criminal, a killer. Everything you learned about him is true. The violence, the threats, the control. You can't save him. You can only save yourself. Torres left her standing in the operations center while agents continued their work. And Selena stood there with the recording device in her hand and the growing certainty that she'd just destroyed the only person who'd ever really seen her. They let her see him 3 days later. Federal holding facility in Lower Manhattan. Concrete walls. Fluorescent lights. The smell of industrial cleaner and desperation. Damien sat on the other side of bulletproof glass wearing an orange jumpsuit that should have looked ridiculous but somehow made him more dangerous. His hair was uncombed. Dark circles under his eyes. A bruise on his jaw from resisting arrest. But those emerald eyes were exactly the same. He picked up the phone. Waited for her to do the same. You look terrible, he said. His voice was rough through the speaker. Selena almost laughed, almost cried. Managed neither. So do you. Prison orange isn't my color. He leaned back, studied her through the glass. Torres told me what you did, how you helped them, wore the wire, got Vincent talking. Very impressive. I didn't know they were recording the operations center. I thought... Her voice cracked. I thought I was failing, that the necklace wasn't working, that you were going to die. And you came anyway, confronted Vincent alone, tried to stop him. Damien's jaw tightened. Stupid, reckless. You could have been killed. I couldn't let him hurt you. The words hung between them. Damien closed his eyes, drew a breath that looked painful. You should hate me, he said quietly. I threatened your mother, controlled you, turned your life into a nightmare. Everything Vincent said was true. I was weak, distracted, made emotional decisions. You protected me. Selena pressed her palm against the glass. When the shooting started, you covered me. Put yourself between me and the bullets. Instinct. Love. The words stopped him cold. Damien stared at her through the glass, something breaking in his expression. Don't, he said roughly. Don't give me that. I don't deserve... Vincent said you fell in love with me, that it made you vulnerable, made you weak. Selena's throat was tight. Was he right? For exactly 10 seconds, Damien didn't speak. Then he leaned forward, pressed his palm against the glass opposite hers, close as they could get with bulletproof barriers between them. Yes. His voice was barely audible. He was right, and it terrified me because I spent 15 years building walls so high nobody could reach me. And you walked into my office wearing duct-taped shoes and called me emotionally dead. And somehow you got through. Tears burned behind Selena's eyes. I'm sorry. For what? for helping them arrest you, for wearing the wire, for surviving. Damien's hand stayed pressed against the glass. That's what you did. You survived me, and I'm glad. Because this, he gestured at the cell behind him. This is where I belong. This is what people like me deserve. Prison, consequences, payment for 15 years of violence. Don't say that. It's true. His voice was firm, final. I hurt people, killed people, built an empire on blood and fear. The fact that I felt something real for you doesn't erase that, doesn't make me redeemable. Selena wiped her eyes. Torres said I should testify, help them build the case, make sure you and Vincent both go away for life. You should. She said I should move on, build a normal life, forget this ever happened. Smart advice. She said I can't save you. Selena's voice dropped, that I can only save myself. Damien's jaw tightened. She's right. Is she? Selena leaned closer to the glass. Because I don't want to be saved from you. I want to understand why a man who could have killed me a dozen times over chose to protect me instead. Why you showed me that photograph. Why you worked beside me through the night. Why you danced with me at the gala like I was the only person in the room. Because you were. The confession tore out of him. For 3 weeks you were the only real thing in my life. Everything else was performance, strategy, the role I play to stay in control. But you, his hand pressed harder against the glass. You saw past all of it, saw the person underneath. And I didn't know how to handle that except push you away. The visiting room guard called out a 5-minute warning. Damien's eyes closed briefly. You need to leave New York. Take the money Blackthorne owes you. Start over somewhere new. Find someone normal. Someone who doesn't carry bodies in his past. I don't want normal. Selena, I want you. The words came out broken, but honest. I want the man who admitted he was tired of pretending, who looked at me like I mattered, who covered me with his body when bullets were flying. That's the person I fell in love with, not the Mafia boss, not the monster. You. Damien's face crumpled. For exactly 3 seconds, she saw past every wall, every defense, straight to the broken, exhausted, terrified human being underneath. Then he pulled himself together, walls slamming back into place. My trial starts in 6 months. Torres has enough evidence to put me away for 25 to life. Vincent is cooperating, giving them everything in exchange for a lighter sentence. The syndicate is collapsing. Everyone who worked for me is either arrested or running. This is over. Then I'll wait. For what? For you. Selena's voice was steady, certain. However long it takes, I'll wait. That's insane. Probably. She almost smiled. But I've done a lot of insane things in the last 3 weeks. What's one more? The guard announced time was up. Damien stood slowly. His hand lingered on the glass. Don't wait for me, he said quietly. Promise me. Live your life. Be happy. Find someone who deserves you. No. Selena, I'll see you at the trial. She stood, picked up her bag. And every visiting day after that, for however long this takes. Then she walked away, left him standing behind the glass, and didn't look back, because if she did, she'd break completely. 6 months later, Selena sat in a federal courtroom wearing a navy dress and minimal makeup, while prosecutors called her to the stand. The gallery was packed. Media, victims' families, people who'd worked for Damien, people who'd been hurt by him. All of them watching her walk to the witness box with expressions ranging from curiosity to hatred. Damien sat at the defense table in a suit his lawyers had provided. He looked thinner, more tired. But when their eyes met across the courtroom, something passed between them that needed no words. The prosecutor approached. Miss Moretti, please state your relationship to the defendant. Selena's hand went to the necklace at her throat. Not the recording device, a simple silver chain Damien had sent her 2 months ago. No note, no explanation, just the necklace and the memory of dancing with him while the world burned down around them. I worked for him, she said clearly, at Blackthorne Holdings, as head of design. And during your employment, did Mr. DeLuca ever discuss illegal activities? Yes. The prosecutor pulled out documents, walked her through dates, conversations, the warehouse visit, the Morrison project, everything she'd witnessed. Selena answered honestly, Didn't minimize, didn't exaggerate, just told the truth about what she'd seen. When the prosecutor finished, Damien's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Miss Moretti, did my client ever physically harm you? No. Threaten you with violence? He threatened my mother to ensure my cooperation. But he never actually harmed her, correct? Correct. The lawyer paced. You testified that Mr. DeLuca showed you a photograph from his childhood, explained how he built his organization, worked beside you on projects. Would you say he treated you differently than his other employees? Selina's throat was tight. Yes. How so? He trusted me, showed me parts of himself he kept hidden from everyone else, treated me like, her voice caught, like I mattered to him. And did you matter to him? The prosecutor objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. The lawyer sat down. The trial continued for 3 more weeks. Witness after witness. Evidence piled higher than mountains. Vincent testified against Damien in exchange for 15 years instead of life. Other syndicate members took deals, turned on each other. And through it all, Damien sat silent, never testifying, never defending himself, just watching the prosecution dismantle 15 years of his life piece by piece. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, came back with guilty verdicts on every count. The judge sentenced him to 30 years, eligible for parole in 20. And when the bailiffs came to take him away, Damien looked at Selina one last time, mouthed 3 words she'd never expected to hear. I love you. Then he was gone. But Mashmish. 5 years later, Selina walked into the California State Prison visiting room carrying a folder and a thermos of coffee. She'd moved back to Los Angeles after the trial, reconnected with her mother, started her own design consultancy that had grown into something surprisingly successful, built a life that looked normal from the outside. But every month she made the same trip, same prison, same visiting room, same man waiting on the other side of the glass. Damien looked different than he had at the trial. Older, more gray in his hair, lines around his eyes. Prison had weathered him the way wind weathers stone, but when he smiled at her through the glass, she still saw the person underneath. He picked up the phone. You didn't have to come. It's a long flight. I wanted to. Selina set down the folder. Besides, I have news. Good news or bad news? Good, I think. She pulled out documents, held them up to the glass. The Morrison family reached out. They want to work with me again. Major project, international scope, significant budget. Damien studied the papers, something shifting in his expression. That's the company I nearly died protecting, the project that almost destroyed both of us. I know. Selina's voice was quiet. And I told them I'd only take it on one condition. Which was? That part of the budget goes toward criminal justice reform, prison education programs, resources for people trying to rebuild after incarceration. She met his eyes. Including you, when you get out. I'm not getting out for another 15 years minimum. I'll wait. Selina, I've been waiting 5 years already. What's 15 more? She pressed her palm against the glass. You told me not to. Told me to live my life. And I did. I built something I'm proud of, made peace with my mother, even dated a few people. Nice, normal, safe. And none of them were you. Her voice was steady. None of them understood what it meant to survive something that should have destroyed you. None of them looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. None of them made me feel alive the way you did. Damien's hand came up to match hers, palm to palm, with only glass between them. I'm still a criminal, he said quietly. Still someone who hurt people. Built an empire on violence. The fact that I'm in prison doesn't change what I am. No. Selina's eyes held his. But it means you're paying for it, facing consequences. And when you get out, if you get out, you'll have a choice. You can go back to that life, or you can try something different. Like what? Like building something that helps instead of hurts. Like using everything you learned about systems and strategy and survival to create something good. Like, she stopped, drew a breath. Like proving that people can change, even people who've done terrible things. You have a lot of faith in me. I have faith in the man who showed me his childhood photograph, who admitted he was tired of pretending, who covered me with his body when bullets were flying. Selena's voice was firm. That man is worth waiting for. The guard announced 5 minutes. Damien's jaw tightened. I don't know if I can be what you want me to be. I don't want you to be anything except honest, real. The person you were when you told me you fell in love with me. She smiled through tears. That's all I've ever wanted. Then you're going to get sick of visiting me, sick of waiting, sick of betting your life on someone who doesn't deserve it. Probably. Selena wiped her eyes. But I'm stubborn. Comes from calling Mafia bosses emotionally dead in airport terminals. Tends to lead to poor decision-making. Damien laughed. Actually laughed. The sound raw and real and beautiful. You're impossible. I learned from the best. The guard called time. They stood slowly, hands still pressed against the glass. I'll see you next month, Selena said. You don't have to. I know, but I will anyway. Because that's what people do when they love someone. They show up, even when it's hard, even when it takes years, even when everyone tells them they're crazy. She picked up her bag, started to turn away. Selena. Damien's voice stopped her. Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing something worth saving, for... His voice cracked. For loving me anyway. Always, she said simply. Then she walked out, left him standing behind the glass, and headed back to California where a life was waiting. Imperfect, complicated, built on the ruins of what they'd survived. But hers. 15 years passed like water through fingers. Selena built her consultancy into one of the most respected design firms on the West Coast, worked with corporations, nonprofits, started that criminal justice reform program she'd promised, visited Damien every month without fail. Watched him change. Prison had stripped away the armor, the careful control, the walls he'd spent decades building. What remained was rawer, more honest, a man learning to live with consequences instead of running from them. He got his GED, then college credits, then started teaching other inmates, sharing what he knew about systems and strategy and survival in ways that helped instead of hurt. And every month when Selena visited, he looked a little more like the person she'd glimpsed in his office that first day, the one who'd admitted he was tired of pretending. The parole hearing happened on a Tuesday in March. Selena sat in the observation gallery wearing the same navy dress she'd worn to his trial. Her hands clasped tight in her lap, her mother beside her, Victoria on her other side. The woman who'd warned her about cages but showed up anyway when Selena needed support. Damien sat before the parole board in prison whites, thinner, grayer, older than his years. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. I'm not going to tell you I'm a different person than I was 20 years ago. That would be a lie. The man who built the DeLuca Syndicate is still part of me. The decisions I made, the people I hurt, I carry all of that. He looked directly at the board. But I've spent 2 decades trying to understand why I chose violence, why I believed control was the same as safety, why I hurt the people who got too close. One of the board members leaned forward. And what did you learn? That I was terrified, of being powerless, of ending up like my father, dead over nothing. So I built walls so high nobody could hurt me. And in the process, I became the thing I feared most. Damien's hands clenched. A person who destroyed others to protect myself. Do you still feel that fear? Every day, but now I know what to do with it. Channel it into something that helps. Teaching, mentoring, showing people that there are other paths besides violence. His voice was quiet. I'll never undo the damage I caused, never bring back the people who died, but I can try to make sure fewer people end up where I did. The hearing lasted 3 hours. The board deliberated for 1. When they returned, the chairwoman's expression was unreadable. Mr. DeLuca, this board has reviewed your record, your programs, your testimony, and we've reached a decision. She paused. Parole is granted, conditional upon continued participation in rehabilitation programs and regular check-ins with your parole officer. You'll be released in 30 days. Damien's face went white. Then something broke in his expression. Relief, terror, hope, all of it bleeding through the careful control. Selena stood on shaking legs, walked out of the observation gallery, found the waiting area where they'd let her see him after processing. 30 minutes later, he appeared, still in prison whites, escorted by guards. But his eyes found hers immediately. They stood on opposite sides of the room, 20 feet of linoleum and fluorescent lights between them. 30 days, Damien said. I'll be waiting. You've been waiting 20 years. What's 30 more days? Selena smiled through tears. I'm stubborn, remember? A guard cleared his throat. Visiting time was over. Damien moved toward the door, stopped, looked back at her. I'm terrified, he admitted, of the outside, of failing, of not being what you need. Then we'll figure it out together. Selena's voice was firm. That's what people do. They face fear. They try. They fail. They try again. And if you decide prison is safer, if you can't handle the outside, I'll understand. But I'm not giving up on you now, not after 20 years. Damien's throat worked. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she smiled, but you're stuck with me anyway. Then he was gone, and Selena stood alone in the waiting room with 30 days between her and whatever came next. The California sun was setting over Los Angeles when Damien walked out of prison 30 days later. He stood on the steps wearing civilian clothes, jeans, a simple shirt, a bag with his possessions, and for the first time in 20 years, no walls between him and the world. Selena waited by her car, older now, gray threading through her dark hair, lines around her eyes from years of building businesses and visiting prisons and refusing to give up. She looked beautiful. Damien crossed the parking lot slowly, like he was learning to walk, learning what freedom felt like after 2 decades in a cage. He stopped in front of her. Hi. Hi. Her voice cracked. Ready to go? I don't know. He looked at the sky, the open road, the endless possibilities. I spent 20 years in a cell, following routines, knowing exactly what each day would bring. He gestured at the world around them. This is terrifying. Good. Selena took his hand. The first time they'd touched without glass between them in 2 decades. That means you're alive. That means you have choices. That means you get to decide who you want to be now. Damien's fingers closed around hers, tight, like he was afraid she'd disappear. I want to be someone who deserves you, he said quietly. Someone who builds instead of destroys. Someone who... His voice broke. Someone who's worth the 20 years you spent waiting. You already are. Selena stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. You're the man who faced consequences, who changed, who learned to help instead of hurt. That's who I've been waiting for. Damien's other hand came up to cup her face, trembling, gentle, like he'd forgotten how to touch someone without causing pain. I'm going to fail, he whispered, make mistakes, struggle. This isn't going to be some perfect redemption story. I know. Selena's eyes held his. But we'll figure it out together, one day at a time. And when you fail, I'll be there. When you struggle, I'll be there, for however long it takes. Why? The word tore out of him. After everything I did, everything I put you through, why are you still here? Because 23 years ago, I crashed into you in an airport terminal, and you looked at me like I was the only real thing in your world. And despite everything that happened after, the threats, the violence, the impossible choices, that moment was true. She smiled through tears. And I've spent 2 decades waiting to see what happens next. Damien pulled her close, held her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. And after 20 years of separation and glass barriers and visiting rooms that smelled like industrial cleaner, he kissed her. Slow, gentle. The kiss of someone learning what it meant to be human again. When they finally pulled apart, the sun had fully set. Los Angeles glowed in the distance, a city full of possibilities and second chances and lives waiting to be built. Where do we go from here? Damien asked. Wherever we want. Selena opened the car door. That's the beauty of freedom. We get to choose. They drove into the city together, past the towers and traffic and chaos, past Selena's offices where a job was waiting if Damien wanted it, past the apartment she'd prepared, past all the careful plans she'd made. and as the city lights blurred outside the windows, Damien reached across and took her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for waiting, for believing, for loving me when I was a monster, and when I was trying to be human and everything in between." "Always," Selena said simply, "because some stories don't end with perfect resolution. Some stories end with two broken people choosing to build something new from the ruins. Some stories end with the understanding that redemption isn't a destination. It's a choice made every single day. And some stories end with a woman who called a mafia boss emotionally dead in an airport terminal, and a man who spent 20 years learning she was right, finally getting their chance to find out what happens when the monster learns to be human. And the girl who never gave up on him gets to see if the wait was worth it." The answer, they discovered over the years that followed, was complicated. There were hard days. Days when Damien struggled with the transition. Days when the walls came back up. Days when Selena wondered if she'd been naive to believe people could truly change. But there were also good days. Days when Damien's work with formerly incarcerated people created real change. Days when Selena's design firm partnered with his programs. Days when they sat on her balcony watching the sunset, and neither of them had to pretend anymore. And slowly, so slowly it was almost imperceptible, they built something that looked like peace. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. And 23 years after a violent thunderstorm brought them together in an airport terminal, Damien DeLuca finally understood what Selena had tried to tell him all along. The opposite of powerlessness wasn't control. It was trust. The kind of trust that meant letting someone see you completely, broken parts and all, and believing they'd stay anyway. The kind of trust Selena had shown him for 2 decades. The kind he was finally learning to return. They never married, never had the fairy tale ending, never pretended the past didn't exist, but on quiet evenings, when the city glowed beneath them and the weight of everything they'd survived pressed down, they had each other. And after a lifetime of walls and cages and impossible choices, that was enough.